Grindelwald template, but Hogwarts White Demon King. Chapter 41. Regarding that place. Jakes described the scene of the desolate cliff to Madame Bagshot. The old woman put on her glasses, her brows gradually furrowing. Mark. Annihilation. Trial. Where did you find these coordinates? An accidental discovery. Jake's tone was calm. Is it special? More than just special. Madame Bagshot put down the book, her eyes looking out the window. Do you know about the Goblin Rebellion Wars? I know a little. In that bloody history, the struggle between wizards and goblins was accompanied by the glory and fall of ancient magic. This ruin likely formed during that period. An ancient wizard, who wished to remain anonymous, fought a powerful goblin army in this valley for 3 days and 3 nights during a fierce battle. That wizard, relying on a profound understanding of the essence of ancient magic, almost single-handedly turned the tide of the battle. He wiped out an entire goblin legion. This also caused the terrain to turn into a land of annihilation. Ultimately, the goblin army was completely annihilated. That wizard, exhausted of power, merged his magic and his will with the valley. She looked at Jakes, her gaze serious. Child, that is no ordinary ruin. The danger level far exceeds the norm. Are you sure you want to go? Jakes nodded. His gaze showed no hesitation. The more dangerous it is, the more valuable it must be. In that case, that wizard must have been the former Grim Reaper. Bagshot was very interested in this point of view. A good thought, but there are no historical records. Jakes remained silent. All right. The following day, Madame Bagshot apparated according to the coordinates. And brought Jakes over. I will see you off here, child. Thank you, madam. Good luck to you, little wizard who dares to venture. After Madame Bagshot left, the wind howled miserably. Jakes' robes flapped loudly in the wind. Before him was a desolate cliff. Dark black vines obscured the cave entrance. Black strange rocks grew haphazardly, piercing the dark sky. The air carried the aura of magic's death. The feeling of death. This is somewhat creepy. Jakes muttered a complaint. Magic perception told him something was there. Guarding this ruin, he considered whether to approach further. He had just stepped onto the edge of the clearing. An anomaly suddenly occurred. What is this? In the air, countless black substances converged frantically. They hissed. Finally, they condensed into a vague humanoid silhouette. Dark magical energy roared continuously. Jakes' pupils contracted slightly. An obscurus. Why would there be something like this here? And it was, a bound and domesticated obscurus, serving as a guardian spirit. Its emotions were generally calm. Unless someone approached. Then it would destroy all living things. Hiss. The guardian spirit let out a sharp sound. And quickly launched an attack. Jakes was speechless. He immediately pulled out his legendary wood wand to resist a black energy beam. The opponent's energy ray was fast. Protega. The shield charm instantly materialized. Boom. The black energy beam struck the barrier, causing violent fluctuations. Not bad, powerful force. Reducto. Incendio. The red light shot out. The guardian spirit's form merely twisted slightly, completely swallowing the spell. The effect was minimal. The obscurus itself is something condensed from dark magic. Simple spell attacks weren't very effective. The guardian spirit roared again, using energy beams to seal off all space. Jakes' mind raced. Obscurus. Dark energy, an aggregated aberration of emotion and magic. The ancient wizard who bound it here must have a control mechanism. His gaze was sharp. He instantly saw through the core of the guardian spirit in the darkness. A faint point of light like a heart. As that, its source of power. Only one chance. Confringo. Avada Kedavra. Boom. The spell exploded. Jakes quickly dodged. He approached the obscurus core. A deep, green light shot straight out. This was his last resort life-saving measure, and it was highly effective against an obscurus. Now is the time. The guardian spirit paused momentarily. Crack. The light point energy of the guardian spirit core lost control and erupted from within. The obscurus exploded. Black energy turbulence scattered in all directions. Smoke and dust filled the air. Jakes resisted with the shield charm. A few seconds later, the storm subsided. In the clearing, the terrifying guardian spirit had vanished without a trace. I succeeded. Who? Jakes let out a long breath. After surviving the battle, his heart was pounding violently. What is that? He cast his gaze forward. At the entrance to the valley, a gate composed of light, shadow, and ancient runes slowly materialized. This meant, the door to the magical ruin had opened. Jake stepped inside. Everything around him vanished. Replacing it was an absolute silence. What is going on with the environment here? The space seems completely different from the outside world, like a small world carved out independently. Jakes could clearly feel that the circulation of magic within his body seemed slightly affected. As an outsider, he had to silently abide by the rules here. Or rather, the rules were rejecting and scrutinizing him. All around, ancient rune carvings were wrapped in the last remnants of magical traces. At least this proved he hadn't come to the wrong place. Suddenly, he stopped walking. Ahead, an ancient runic character light screen materialized out of thin air. Rule 1. Reality manifestation. Effect. Energy conversion, material composition. The moment the textual information flooded his mind, Jakes trembled violently. He clearly felt the system template underwent a drastic change. Special ability unlocked. Fooling reality weakened version. Effect. Can manipulate reality through fiction by consuming a large amount of one's own magic. Duration. Permanent. Extremely high consumption, prone to backlash, only one usage opportunity. This is the ability to change reality. Although it's fake, everything becomes real. If I implant this into the Philosopher's Stone, then the material transformation will succeed. He had previously studied Nicholas Flamel's notes. His attempt to replicate the Philosopher's Stone failed. He always felt something was missing. And it was precisely the lack of this ancient magic ability. If he could truly make the false become real, then he could successfully change the situation where the Philosopher's Stone couldn't function. After all, Jakes, I say you are real, and you are real. So, that's how it is. It's just a pity, this ability can only be used once. I must leave here quickly. Having defeated the Obscurus and gained the desired power. The next second, Jakes felt that the magical ruin was urging him to leave. Godric's Hollow. The woods. The surroundings were quiet. After Jakes left the magical ruins, the flow of magic within his body naturally recovered. The suppression of rules in that place, it must be more than just this. Next, I should find a place and bring that thing out. Subsequently, he chose an open space. Waving his wand, he cast a silent spell. But he was still unfamiliar with high-grade spells. Preparation complete. Next is the refining work. He took out the red gem from his dragon hide belt. It was the same one he had previously failed to refine into the Philosopher's Stone. He took out the cauldron and materials, positioning everything inside the system. The abilities of imitation and transmutation were ready. Begin. Magic power injected. The magical structure, similar to last time, began to surge, causing the red gem to emit a steady light. The alchemy structure began to surge, forming inscrutable patterns. Immediately after, the light intensified greatly. Specks of gold appeared within the dark red color. Injecting ability. Transmutation. Rewriting into a genuine existence. The final moment, success. Jakes chanted softly. His mental focus was highly concentrated. He injected the two major core components of the template almost precisely into the Philosopher's Stone. This was the process of reshaping the essence. The next second, the brand new red gem gradually transformed. The process did not immediately collapse like the last time. This time, success was guaranteed. A smile appeared on Jakes's face. Just at the most critical moment of the alchemy process. Swish, swish, swish. Several sounds of rushing wind suddenly came from the outskirts of the forest. Immediately following, several figures wearing Auror uniforms and looking alert rushed in. What's going on? Jakes quickly retracted the Philosopher's Stone and stopped the alchemy. The person leading them was tall and dark-skinned. Kingsley Shacklebolt was stunned for a moment. Wait, a child. The two Aurors behind him stood spread out, wands raised level, equally confused. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Who are you? What are you doing here? Kingsley's voice was low. Jakes maintained his calm demeanor. And you recklessly intruded into my silent spell territory, and then you question who I am. Kingsley Shacklebolt was silent for a moment. Or, Ministry of Magic official, Kingsley Shacklebolt. Jakes, Hogwarts student. He stated his name, his tone flat. Then can you answer what you are doing here alone? A. Young child, mastering the silent spell. Facing the other party's questioning. Jakes's expression remained unchanged. Holiday travel, practicing magic here. What, is it against the law? Practicing magic. Magic residue of this intensity doesn't look like something a first-year student should have. I am an exception. Jakes looked directly at Kingsley, Mr. Shacklebolt, if I recall correctly. The Auror office seems to lack the authority to randomly interrogate legal wizards, especially when they haven't broken any laws. He showed that he was not ignorant. Kingsley seemed to be assessing his words. These are extraordinary times, Mr. Jakes. We received a report that unusual dark magic fluctuations appeared in this area previously. He paused, clearly hinting at something. And recently, there have been rumors about dark arts, and the ministry is taking it seriously. Another Auror behind him added in a low voice, loud enough for Jakes to hear. It's all because the minister doesn't believe Dumbledore. Insisting that we secretly investigate all suspicious clues to prove you know who hasn't returned. Shut up. Kingsley immediately hissed. That Auror immediately fell silent. As expected. Just like the rumors inside the leaky cauldron. The Ministry of Magic was secretly investigating Lord Voldemort's status. Jakes understood in his heart. Dark arts. You know who. I don't understand what you're talking about. I'm just a student, practicing magic here. If I disturbed the Auror's work, I apologize. His attitude was neither humble nor arrogant. His reasoning was sufficient. Kingsley gave him a deep look. Although there were residual magic fluctuations in the air, proving it was far from ordinary practice, there was no evidence. Does your guardian know you are here? Kingsley changed the question. I am an orphan. Jakes replied. Kingsley fell silent. Finally, he put away his wand. No matter what you were doing. This area currently needs to be monitored, and for your safety, we need to escort you away from here and return you to a safe area within Britain. The feeling of apparition was not pleasant. Especially when being escorted back by Aurors. Subsequently, Jakes stood helplessly in front of the black door of the leaky cauldron. This is where we part, Mr. Miles. Next time, don't go to dangerous places alone. He said no more, took his two subordinates, and disappeared using apparition again. Jakes watched coldly. It seems that in the future, he needs to act with greater caution. Subsequently, he pushed open the door of the leaky cauldron and walked inside. Oh, look who it is. Our solitary Mr. Miles. Jakes turned his head. In a relatively quiet corner of the bar, Lucius Malfoy appeared, holding a glass of red wine that seemed out of place in the setting. Sitting beside him was the pale-faced Narcissa Malfoy, and Draco Malfoy. Jakes. So it was you. I wondered who it was. Jakes was not surprised by their appearance. Are your important matters finished? Lucius put down his wine glass. He clearly still remembered Draco inviting him and being rejected previously. Jakes glanced over the Malfoy family. It's temporarily concluded, Mr. Malfoy. Lucius stood up and straightened his robes. In that case, I wonder if Jakes would be willing to honor us by visiting Malfoy Manor as a guest. We need to have a good talk. Jakes glanced at Lucius and nodded slightly. No problem, let's go. The reception room of Malfoy Manor. Luxurious and cold. Exuding the arrogance of purebloods. A house elf bowed, serving black tea. Then silently retreated. Lucius Malfoy stared at the young man opposite him. He set down his teacup, making a crisp sound. So, Jakes. The active magic potion we collaborated on earlier has been very well received in the market. But the members of Slughorn's Old Fox's Slug Club control the high-end channels. This does not conform to the style of the House of Malfoy. His tone was flat, with a hint of probing. Jakes leaned back in his chair, looking composed. He naturally understood the meaning behind the other party's words. You want new developments. Developments, of course there are. He took out a small crystal vial. Its light was restrained, yet it exuded astonishing life energy. Improved potions, and not just this one, I even have upgrades. Effect. Lucius leaned forward slightly. Increases the limit, but with side effects. Lucius's pupils constricted slightly. Increasing the limit, this meant becoming even more powerful. Even if only to a certain extent, it would be enough to drive some people mad. Cost. His voice held a hint of urgency. 20% higher than before. However, mass production is not an issue. Clap. Lucius clapped his hands gently. Only 20% higher in cost. Yet the effects were worlds apart. What did this mean? It meant they could lead a new wave of storm. Going further, it meant monopoly. Even the high-end potion market. Incredible. Lucius murmured, Jakes, you always bring surprises. The look in his eyes towards Jakes had completely changed. A treasure that must be tightly bound to the House of Malfoy. So, the specific distribution plan. Night. The manor's guest room was luxurious. Jakes had not fallen asleep. He sat at the desk, toying with the formed Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone has been replicated, that's undeniable. It's just that the effect might be far inferior to the original, what a pity. At least, to achieve true immortality, even more powerful strength is needed. Just as he was feeling regretful. Suddenly, an extremely faint sound entered his ears. Desire, power. Jakes paused. His eyes instantly sharpened. He knew this wasn't an illusion. The source of the sound came from somewhere in the manor. He rose, following the intermittent whispers, and began to search. Finally, he stopped outside a closed door. This is the study. Lucius locked it. The sound was coming from inside. The door was locked, enchanted with a spell. Although he could open it with an Alohomora, he hesitated. If he were discovered, Lucius can't do without me now. Alohomora. Then the door silently opened. The study was dark. But the seductive whispers grew clearer. Come, I can give you everything you desire, power. On the bookshelf, Jakes's gaze locked onto a diary. This was the source of the sound. As he got closer, the sound became even clearer. Come, you are very special. Inside this, there is a soul. If I'm not mistaken, a Horcrux. Jakes instantly realized. He had been about to reach out and touch the diary's cover, but he immediately stopped. But the next second, a large amount of soul power surged forth, attracting Jakes. If it were an ordinary wizard, they would have probably lost their composure by now. But Jakes was not swayed in the slightest. Instead, he actively guided this chaos. Soul power. Rare ancient magic, that fellow really did investigate it as well. Immediately, the power stopped. The voice also began to sound intermittently, repeating that sentence. You are very special. Who are you? Jakes asked directly with his mind. Tom Riddle. Or, you can also call me, the heir of Slytherin. The heir of Slytherin. Precisely. I sense pure power within you. You are worthy to inherit Slytherin's great legacy. Come and control the dormant power of Hogwarts, for example, the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. It directly threw out the bait. A basilisk. It was indeed quite a temptation. Inherit. And then, like you, become a diary that can only whisper in the shadows. Riddle's voice faltered. You. Impudent. I'm not interested in being an heir. Jakes directly interrupted it, however, there's someone who might better suit your requirements. Who? Draco Malfoy. Jakes calmly recommended, pureblood, Slytherin, eager to prove himself. He's a better collaborator for you. The diary was silent for a moment, seemingly weighing its options. Draco Malfoy. The next morning's breakfast. The atmosphere at the long table was subtle. Jakes unhurriedly enjoyed the food meticulously prepared by the house elf. As if nothing had happened last night. Lucius was somewhat distracted. Draco, on the other hand, seemed a bit excited, as if eager to show something. Father. Regarding our last discussion about some expansion plans for the family's future, I believe I am now qualified to participate. Lucius frowned, looking at his son. Qualified. Draco, you are still too young. Those matters are not for you to worry about. I'm not a child anymore. Draco's tone became agitated. I've undergone strict tutoring. I know the glory and responsibility of purebloods. I know how to protect the Malfoy interests. He puffed out his chest, trying to appear more mature. Shut up, Draco. Lucius sharply interrupted, there are many things you still need to learn. His tone was firm, leaving no room for doubt. Draco's face instantly flushed red. He felt his father's disdain. Especially in front of Jakes, this made him feel deeply humiliated. Father. I said no. Lucius put down his napkin, his attitude unyielding. He stood up, clearly unwilling to continue the topic. Draco clenched his fists tightly, his nails almost digging into his palms. He suddenly looked at Jake's. His eyes were complex, holding both unwillingness and a hint of ambition. Jake's calmly met his gaze. He picked up his cup and took a sip of juice. As if nothing concerned him. Dinner ended unhappily. Draco Malfoy retreated to his bedroom. But his chest still heaved violently with anger. Father had actually scolded him mercilessly right in front of Jake's. This completely damaged his self-esteem. You are still too young. There is still much you need to learn. Prove yourself. These words buzzed in his mind. Why? Just because he is the head of the House of Malfoy. To so casually deny my ability and determination. Is he even my father? I have clearly worked so hard. I received the strictest tutoring. He yearned for validation. He yearned for power. Especially to make his father look at him with new respect. Just then, a faint voice sounded. Are you unwilling? Are you angry? Draco shot up into a sitting position. He looked around, filled with suspicion and uncertainty. But he was slightly afraid. Who is it? Do you yearn for recognition? Do you yearn for true power? The voice was full of temptation. Every word struck precisely at his heart. Who are you? Stop playing tricks in my house. Show yourself. Draco lowered his voice, trying hard to sound arrogant. Come to me. I can give you everything you want. Everything you yearn for. The voice guided him. The next second, Draco vaguely stood up and walked out of the bedroom as if sleepwalking. His destination was the study. In the room next door. Jake's was meditating with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he frowned slightly. That guy actually went to tempt Draco. This pull is even stronger than last night. He hadn't expected it. He had only mentioned it casually. Yet the diary actually believed him. Draco Malfoy, confused, staggered toward the study. Then he pushed open the study door. He could hear the whispers of the soul even more clearly. It's here. Open it, touch me, you will gain power surpassing your father's. Power surpassing fathers. To become the true head of the Malfoy family. A brief silence. Followed by the sound of a drawer being pulled open. Immediately afterward, Draco accepted the entity, suppressing his excitement and disbelief. Although he didn't understand why a diary could speak. He understood that he had obtained everything he yearned for. The next day. Malfoy Manor. The underground potion room. Various silver utensils shone brightly. Precious potion ingredients were placed on the storage shelves. Jake stood alone in front of a giant cauldron. Then he took out a dark red gemstone. Let's begin. Jake's tone was calm. Early that morning, Lucius Malfoy had proposed that they needed to expedite the potion's market launch. So Jake's promised that he could produce it immediately. At Jake's strong request, he came to this potion-making room alone to work, forbidding anyone else from watching. And his method was precisely to utilize the Philosopher's Stone. Subsequently, he took out a portion of the previous elixir. He gently dropped the Philosopher's Stone into the cauldron and poured the elixir into it. Buzz. A faint glow flowed across the surface of the Philosopher's Stone. The basic elixir seemed to be infused with a soul. The color changed. The essence became more vigorous. Even the air in the potion-making room couldn't suppress it. Outside the potion room, the three members of the Malfoy family waited there. Two of them paced back and forth. When she felt this surge of power, Narcissa stopped walking and covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes were filled with shock. Merlin. This powerful aura. Lucius stared intently at the door of the potion room. His breathing was rapid. He could feel that the medicinal effect permeating the air far surpassed yesterday's. He succeeded. It's unbelievable. Jake's actually succeeded. Draco's mouth hung wide open. This was Jake's ability. But he curled his lip. Hey. After a long moment. Perhaps the potion making was finished. The door to the potion room finally opened. Jake stood calmly at the doorway and made an inviting gesture. Alright, come in. You can take a look. Compared to yesterday, the effect of this improved version has increased fivefold. Fivefold. A full fivefold. Lucius felt his heart beating wildly. We could feel it completely from the aura just now. I am eager to try it. He looked at the elixir in the cauldron, his eyes filled with desire. This wasn't just some improved elixir. This was a miracle. Suit yourselves. Jakes looked at the three of them. Lucius was the first to step forward. He impatiently put the elixir from the cauldron into his mouth. Boom. Vast life energy dissolved within his body. Like rain after a long drought, truly refreshing. He even felt that some old injuries had healed by more than half. Amazing. Unbelievable. He muttered to himself. Narcissa also cautiously tasted a drop. Lucius, this feeling. I understand. She let out a gasp of wonder. A blush even appeared on her face. Draco swallowed a drop. He immediately fell silent. This power was practically equal to the feeling the diary gave him. Jakes, you truly are a great man. This is what we yearn for. The potion making is finished. Jakes yawned. I need to go rest now. Feel free to stay. Inside the potion making room, there was silence. Apart from the heavy breathing of the three of them. Only the sound of Jakes's slow footsteps departing. Alright, this is the continuation based on the chapter outline you provided. In the quiet environment, Jakes touched the Philosopher's Stone. He could feel the hidden energy, but much was still missing. Far from enough. Let's try something. Subsequently, he took out a lead block. After bringing the Philosopher's Stone close, he channeled magic power. Light flowed. The internal structure of the lead block began to transform, turning into a heavy piece of gold. Jakes picked it up and examined it carefully. The imitation was successful. But it still can't compare to the effect of the original version. He keenly observed the disparity. The gap was obvious. If the energy were sufficient, the effectiveness of those elixirs just now could have increased by at least tenfold. Perhaps even, touching upon the domain of true life and magic power. If one desires to surpass the original version, a larger, purer energy source is required. Or, his eyes flickered. A deeper rule comprehension. A sudden knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Jakes. It was Draco's voice. His tone was filled with unconcealed excitement. Jakes waved his hand, dismissing the Philosopher's Stone, and opened the door. What is it? Father sent me to ask if we can continue the research tomorrow. Jakes immediately shook his head, his tone flat. No, one should not be too greedy with elixirs. Besides, I require private time. Draco was stunned for a moment, seeming slightly dissatisfied. But due to the pressure, he still nodded. All right. I won't disturb you. He then hastily left. Jakes glanced at him and immediately closed the door. Master. Master. The Ministry of Magic. People from the Ministry of Magic are here. It's that Weasley. Lucius's silver fork, which he was using to eat, clattered onto his plate. His face instantly darkened. Dobby the house elf suddenly appeared, bringing the news. Arthur Weasley. He leisurely wiped the corner of his mouth, his eyes cold. That fool who likes to study Muggle junk. What is he doing here? Narcissa frowned slightly. Lucius, it wouldn't be for. Draco showed disgust. Despicable Weasley. Jakes sat in the guest seat, unmoving. Soon, footsteps approached. Arthur Weasley brought two nervous young Aurors. He was wearing a faded Ministry of Magic uniform. His face bore the seriousness of official business. But when his gaze swept over the dining table and saw Jakes, he was somewhat startled. Jakes. What are you doing here? He recalled Fred and George's rambling mentions of the solitary Slytherin genius when they came home. How did he end up with the Malfoy family? Jakes put down his cup, his tone calm. Mr. Weasley, I am a guest here. A simple answer, without any explanation. Arthur opened his mouth, but swallowed his words. He turned to Lucius. Beginning his official business, he presented the Ministry of Magic search warrant. Lucius Malfoy, we have received intelligence that you are suspected of harboring illegal dark arts items here. This is a routine inspection, please cooperate. Lucius snorted, stood up, and looked down at Arthur. Is it another one of these boring excuses, Weasley? Because your pathetic salary can't afford decent robes, you're jealous of others' legitimate collections. His eyes were full of scorn. Some families, the poverty in their bloodline cannot be changed. Even if you squeeze into the Ministry of Magic, it won't change your inferiority. His words precisely struck at what Arthur cared about most. The two young Aurors' faces flushed red, but they dared not speak. Arthur's fists clenched. But he forcibly suppressed his anger. Performing official duties, Malfoy, please step aside. Lucius sneered. He stepped aside, clearing the path. Be my guest. I truly hope you can find something in my manor. Arthur, with the oars, began a symbolic search within the manor. Jakes watched the scene quietly. Feeling bored. Pure blood and half-blood, conflict. Internal strife within the Ministry of Magic. Hey. The search quickly ended. They found nothing. Lucius couldn't help but mock. Well, Weasley. If you're still not giving up, would you like to check the house elf living quarters beneath the manor? Just like Dobby. You escaped this time, but don't think you'll escape next time. The things you've done will eventually be exposed. Arthur, with a sullen expression, prepared to leave. As he passed Jakes, he paused. Thinking of his children's descriptions of him and Molly's nagging, he hesitated, then spoke. Jakes, if you're not busy, would you like to come to the Burrow for a visit? Today, Ginny is having a small school entry party, celebrating her going to Hogwarts. Fred and George would definitely want you to come too. As soon as these words were spoken, Lucius's face instantly became even uglier. Narcissa also frowned. Draco scoffed, muttering, a pauper's party. Jakes's eyes flickered. The Burrow. The Weasley family. So he readily accepted the invitation. All right. Arthur was stunned for a moment. He hadn't expected him to agree so readily, and then a smile appeared on his face. Wonderful. Molly will be very happy. If you use flow powder, just shout, the Burrow. Lucius couldn't stop Jakes from leaving. Because Jakes was a guest, not a prisoner. After seeing off Arthur Weasley, the atmosphere in the living room was a bit awkward. Jakes, I hope you understand what you're doing. The Weasley family. Mr. Lucius. These are the samples that need to be tested for the next stage. Jakes interrupted him, his tone still calm. He took out several shimmering potions and placed them on the table. Then, he pulled out a piece of parchment. Several tasks were listed on it. You can use the Malfoy family's channels to conduct market research now. First, the market situation and price of high-level potions. Second, client information. Third, who are the potential competitors. Then, get me a detailed report. I will develop new potions to ensure maximum profit. Facing the clear task requirements on the parchment, Lucius's expression changed. It wasn't that he was used to giving orders, but he hadn't expected Jakes's efficiency and ideas to be so clear. There were even several new potions already on the table. Ultimately, all dissatisfaction was suppressed. Very well. I hope you have been enjoying your stay at the manor during this time. Of course. Farewell. Jakes nodded, saying nothing more. He turned and walked out, leaving the Malfoy family with complex expressions. They had thought their cooperation with Jakes meant they had won him over. But they hadn't expected Jakes to still maintain his independence, coming and going as he pleased, leaving the suffocating luxury of Malfoy Manor. Jakes did not go directly to the Burrow. He first went to Diagon Alley. His goal was clear. First, a magical stationery shop. The latest self-inking quill. And, the highest quality magical ink, all colors. These were all suitable gifts for young wizards entering school. Next, a candy store. All flavors of candy, a bit of everything. Chocolate frogs. Honeydew sweets. Finally, he stopped in front of a secluded accessories shop. His gaze swept over the display window. A small gemstone hairpin was displayed there. The customer is truly bright. This has a calming spell on it, which can relieve fatigue. This one, wrap it up. He paid the galleon and put away the small gift box. Then he left the shop and returned to the leaky cauldron. The Burrow. Extremely cramped. It looked especially crowded at the moment. Molly Weasley had personally prepared many delicious dishes. Roast chicken, meat pies, mashed potatoes, and a slightly burnt cauldron cake. Come on, everyone. Today is Ginny's entrance party. Thank you very much, Jakes, for being willing to join us. Dig in. Since the shopping was complete, Jakes arrived at the Burrow via the Flow network, bringing quite a few gifts. And Molly had already prepared the feast. All right, I won't stand on ceremony. Of course, dear. Arthur and Molly sat at the head of the table, their faces beaming with smiles. Almost all the Weasley children were present. Bill, Charlie, Percy, and so on, the twins, Ron, and Ginny. Fred and George exchanged a look and quietly pulled out a small bottle. Ron, try this. Firework Edition Special Pumpkin Juice. Fred grinned mischievously and poured it into Ron's cup. Guaranteed to make your tongue multicolored. George chimed in from the side. Get lost. Ron shielded his cup, looking wary. Put those things away. Molly suddenly snapped, warning them. We just wanted to add some color to the party. George shrugged, but put the bottle away nonetheless. Exactly. It's fun. Right, Jakes? Fred asked Jakes for his opinion. It's certainly in line with your style. Jakes chuckled softly. Just then, Percy straightened his back and adjusted his highly polished glasses. Mr. Jakes, although you are a Slytherin student. And I hear you have outstanding grades in Slytherin, so you must have thoroughly researched the restrictions on cross-species transfiguration in magical theory. You even recognize this prefect badge, don't you? The dining table fell silent for a moment. Bill and Charlie exchanged a knowing look. Fred and George immediately perked up, winking at each other. Jakes looked up at Percy, his gaze calm. After the Goblin rebellions in the 18th century, conservative wizards systematically altered the records with the aim of restricting house elves. Percy's face darkened. Not bad. You certainly have some talent. So, is your ambition to work for the Ministry of Magic in the future? Jakes shook his head. The Ministry of Magic. I'm not interested in that place. You always look at it with worshipful eyes, but you never see the deeper issues. If you spoke carefully with Mr. Arthur, you wouldn't be so eager about that place. Regarding Percy, he absolutely couldn't stand anyone looking down on him or slandering the Ministry of Magic. Percy's face instantly flushed crimson. What arrogance. Forget it, you simply can't understand the greatness of the Ministry of Magic. An awkward silence settled over the table. Whoa, Fred whispered in admiration. Cool, George grinned. Ron lowered his head, clearly snickering. Even Ginny, the guest of honor today, was watching Jakes. She was impatient with Percy, who had been showing off his prefect badge all summer. Jakes, maybe you have a point. Percy needs to realize. What does a first-year kid like you know? Bill smiled at his little sister. Charlie, however, burst into loud laughter. Well said, kid. Some officials are a joke when faced with a real dragon. I like your attitude. You've got guts. He leaned in closer. His body was permeated with the biological scent of dragons. Hey, seriously. If you don't go to the Ministry of Magic later, would you be interested in working in Romania? I believe you'd make an excellent dragon tamer. This invitation stunned everyone at the table. Jakes shrugged his shoulders. He mused, it's too early to consider those things now. But if the opportunity arises in the future, I will certainly visit. My wand has a dragon heartstring core, so I will explore the power of dragons. Dragon heartstring. Charlie opened his mouth slightly, becoming even more enthusiastic. You have the guts and the skill. I'll be waiting for you in Romania then. Deal. The dinner party eventually came to an end. Jakes prepared to leave. He politely declined the invitation to stay the night and prepared to return to the leaky cauldron. As he was leaving, Ginny jogged after him to the doorway, her cheeks slightly flushed. Thank you, Jakes. Thank you for the gifts, and thank you for coming today. Jakes stopped and looked at her. It's nothing. I wish you a pleasant time at Hogwarts. Ginny suddenly spoke. And also, I want to thank you for helping me at Flourish and Blotts a year ago. Jakes hadn't expected her to remember that. At that time, he had first experienced the power of his legendary wood wand. Which had been a pleasant surprise. You're welcome. I'm leaving now. Okay. See you at Hogwarts. With those words, Jakes left the burrow. He returned to the leaky cauldron. The remainder of the holiday was running low. Jakes spent his days in his room at the leaky cauldron. Most of his time was spent analyzing the Philosopher's Stone. Occasionally, he flipped through the market research reports sent by Lucius. Gradually, the atmosphere of the start of the school year grew thicker. Diagon Alley had reached its annual major sale day. Young wizards and their parents bustled through Diagon Alley. Only Jakes was alone. I need to alter my wizard robes at Madame Malkin's Robes for all occasions. Buy some rare herbs at the apothecary. Nimbus 2001, not rare enough. Go to Flourish and Blotts to buy new books. The whole process was quick and efficient. He then arrived at the entrance of Flourish and Blotts. He was slightly stunned. What is this? Outside the bookstore. Huge, constantly flickering posters now covered every surface. It was almost always the same person, with the name written below, Gilderoy Lockhart. Gilderoy Lockhart. Order of Merlin, 3rd class recipient. Honorary member of the Anti-Dark Arts League. 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. Grand signing event. Right here at Flourish and Blots. Meet the legendary hero face to face. Get an autographed copy of his works. Listen to his thrilling adventures battling werewolves, banshees, and vampires. Time. The last week before Hogwarts starts. A magical event not to be missed. At the entrance of the bookstore. Young witches were excitedly whispering to each other. They held full sets of Lockhart's works in their hands. Staff members were busy setting up a temporary signing table. Jake stood not far away. Memories instantly surfaced in his mind. Gilderoy Lockhart, that useless professor. It looks like Defense Against the Dark Arts class this year will rely on self-study again. As for this Lockhart, he didn't have many memories of him. He only knew he was a useless idiot. However, his gaze swept over the books in the witch's hands. He smelled a business opportunity. If wizards like this sort of thing, then it's necessary to buy some scribes' quills and brand new parchment. Subsequently, a brand new plan emerged in his mind. Diagon Alley before the start of term. It was practically packed. Jakes walked through it, passing Flourish and Blots. He ran into a familiar figure. Hermione. She was standing at the entrance of the bookstore. Staring blankly at the flashing Lockhart poster. She was already carrying several thick books and was startled by Jake's appearance. A smile appeared on Hermione's face. Jakes, are you here to buy books too? Jake's gaze fell upon the books in her arms. The one on top. The cover showed Lockhart smiling at a group of snowmen. The title, Year with the Tibetan Yeti. You are reading this. Why aren't you studying the school textbooks? Jakes paused. Hermione's face flushed slightly. This is Gilderoy Lockhart's book. He is a truly remarkable wizard. And, she lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret. He is our Defense Against the Dark Arts professor this year. These are all required textbooks. Jakes was silent for 2 seconds. Our new professor, right. I hope you can learn genuine Defense Against the Dark Arts class knowledge from a storybook. Hermione was momentarily speechless, then argued, this isn't a collection of stories. These are his real experiences. The book talks about his battles with various dark arts creatures. For example, breaking up with a banshee, wandering with ghouls. So, Jakes interrupted her, do we also need to learn how to smile while facing the camera? Obviously. This was mocking Lockhart's large poster. Hermione was a little angry. But she couldn't find anything to refute him with. And so, Hermione puffed out her cheeks in anger, hugged her books, and left. You just don't understand. Jake's tone returned to normal. Forget it, I'll just buy this year's books secondhand. The value doesn't match the price of a new book. Even though he wasn't short on money right now. But spending galleons on such things, he considered equivalent to waste. Even, for the new school year's Defense Against the Dark Arts, it seemed he couldn't hold any expectations. The Flourish and Blots book signing event. The scene was explosive. Lockhart was surrounded by a crowd of witches and reporters. Flash bulbs kept popping. His signature laughter and words could be heard from afar. Yes, this is indeed a daunting task, but Hogwarts needs me. I cannot refuse the children's expectations. Jake stood on the periphery of the crowd, observing the drama as if watching a play. He saw the Weasley family pushing through the crowd. And Harry. Of course. Lucius Malfoy, bringing Draco, also walked over from a nearby shop. And walked straight toward Arthur Weasley. Because of the search incident. The two instantly became hostile. Lucius. Arthur's voice was hard. Arthur. Buying books for the children. Lucius drawled, his eyes sweeping over the Weasley family's attire. What a heartwarming scene. It seems the salary at the misuse of Muggle artifacts office finally went up a few nuts. Arthur's face turned red. That's none of your business, Malfoy. Lucius sneered. It seems, second-hand books are quite a burden for certain families. He reached out and picked up the second-hand books. Unable to resist mocking them. But in that very instant, Jakes clearly saw. Lucius silently slipped a black-covered diary into Guinea's cauldron. This. Jakes frowned slightly. Who exactly is the diary choosing to be the heir? Or, was Draco not chosen that night? He continued observing. Lucius wore a look of regret, which seemed especially false. Truly, pitiable. Arthur's chest heaved, clearly furious. You just wait, Lucius Malfoy. I will definitely catch you out. Jakes stood not far away, taking in the entire scene. The diary was ultimately disposed of by Lucius in this manner. The target was the youngest daughter of the Weasley family. Should he intervene? Finally. He chose not to. This time, the spearhead hadn't landed on him. Draco wasn't targeting him either. Why should he rush to save Ginny twice? Subsequently, another brand new shop in Diagon Alley was holding a luxurious opening ceremony. The dark green velvet curtain was pulled back, revealing a glittering gold sign. Malfoy Jack's Potions Shop. Narcissa Malfoy, wearing an elegant dark green robe, smiled. She was greeting several wizards from pure blood families. Please feel free to look around. The potions produced in partnership with the House of Malfoy definitely won't lose out to any potion shop in Diagon Alley. After all, Lucius put in a lot of effort for this matter. The interior of the shop was luxuriously decorated. It was almost certainly the most expensive shop in Diagon Alley. Many working wizards were showcasing the remedies. This is the place. Malfoy Jack's Potions Shop. Jakes walked over. Looking at the sign, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. That name. Back then, he only agreed to the partnership, but he never agreed to this naming convention. Lucius walked over, his face showing the calmness that followed a recently extinguished rage. Since the shop had opened successfully, he still needed to force a smile to manage the situation. What do you think, Jakes? This location, this decor, they match the quality of our products. Jakes pointed at the sign. Isn't this name a bit? This is the best publicity. Lucius was extremely confident. The reputation of Malfoy, combined with your name, a powerful alliance. This expands your influence and immediately lets all customers understand the Malfoy family's commitment to this store. Narcissa also walked over, her voice soft. Jakes, this is a necessary business strategy. We need a name that is both striking and trust-building. In this matter, this was indeed the best choice. Cooperation meant compromise. As long as it didn't affect the final interests and plans. It was just a name. Have it your way. Jakes smiled helplessly. However, he looked at the potions inside the shop. He suddenly felt that Lucius was actually quite capable in his dealings. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gained Lord Voldemort's trust repeatedly. Then who will be managing this place later? Narcissa stepped forward, looking very pleased. Naturally, me. I've arranged the staff, you can be completely at ease. Jakes nodded. Since they had just opened, everything was going very smoothly. He then agreed. All right. The opening of the Malfoy Jack's Potions Shop immediately caused quite a stir in the pure blood family circles. Lucius Malfoy's reputation, coupled with the news of astonishingly effective improved potions, caused many old family names to send representatives. Inside the shop, Narcissa Malfoy was dressed in luxurious robes, behaving elegantly. She even brought her son along today. Draco also wore brand new robes and tried hard to straighten his back. His face displayed arrogance. Jakes, meanwhile, stood in a relatively quiet corner, calmly observing everything. Madame Malfoy, this is truly surprising. A lady took a sip of the potion sample in her cup. The shock in her eyes was hard to conceal. This effect is at least 30% stronger than the tonic I bought through internal channels of the Slughorn Club. You flatter me, madam. Narcissa smiled and nodded, her tone modest. But what she showed was a well-deserved pride. The House of Malfoy likewise only uses the highest quality potions. The fact that you like it proves your appreciation level is good. On the other side, several other families, the Knotts, the Parkinson family, and others were also carefully examining the other potions. The speed of magic recovery is visible to the naked eye. The stability is extremely high, you barely feel any burden. Although the price is high, it is absolutely worth the galleon. Sounds of praise constantly echoed throughout the luxurious shop. Listening to these discussions, the smile on Lucius's face grew more genuine. He glanced at Jakes in the corner. Jakes, what do you have to say about the huge success on the first day? Regarding the market, I did a thorough investigation. With the potions you created, we will soon dominate half of Diagon Alley. Jakes nodded. Not bad. Lucius was not very satisfied with this reaction. Just, not bad. Show some excitement, Jakes. Jakes rolled his eyes at him. Through this shop, potions have brought wealth and status. But it still cannot truly change my strength. I'll get excited when I become powerful. Their pursuits were different. Their ideas were naturally different. Lucius Malfoy stopped paying attention to Jakes and began admiring the grand success of the opening day. Meanwhile, inside a house in an unknown village, the sound of two people talking could be heard. Dumbledore, and an old wizard whose physique resembled a fat walrus. Horace Slughorn. Albus, is this child really as amazing as you say? Talent not inferior to mine back then, not inferior to Lily's back then. Slughorn's voice carried a hint of laughter. Of course, I'm not denying your judgment, but how is it that I wouldn't know about the appearance of such a genius? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. He gently put down the lemon drop, which Slughorn had specially prepared for him. In Diagon Alley, a newly opened potion shop seems to have launched some extraordinarily effective products. Oh. Slughorn became interested. Which master's work is this? Dumbledore smiled slightly. It is the child I spoke of. A young Slytherin second-year student, whose name is Jakes. Slughorn narrowed his eyes. Is he truly a potion genius? Then I must go and see. Albus, you had better not be deceiving me. A trace of amusement flashed in Dumbledore's blue eyes. Of course not, Horace. I look forward to hearing your observations, but I have some matters at the school, so I won't accompany you. Slughorn saw Dumbledore off. He used apparition to arrive at Diagon Alley almost instantly. He pushed through the crowd. His gaze accurately locked onto a shop. The Malfoy Jack's Potions Shop. Seeing this name, he raised an eyebrow. Malfoy. Jakes. Is that Lucius fellow up to something again? He squeezed into the shop. He went straight to the display case, practically pressing his nose against the crystal bottles. He pulled out the magnifying glass he carried with him. He carefully observed the potion. Both the color and consistency were incredibly precise. He gently fanned the scent towards himself. Perfect. Perfect. Nearly flawless purification. Which master's handiwork is this, exactly? He muttered to himself. As a potion master, he understood far better than those pure-blood noblewomen, the terrifying skill represented by these liquids. Even a breakthrough, in the existing potion system. Dean of the past, what an honor to have you visit. Lucius Malfoy flashed over and appeared behind the old walrus. He suddenly looked up, his gaze fixed. Lucius. What exactly is the deal with these potions? Lucius Malfoy wore a look of satisfaction. Dean, in this shop, you are merely a customer. Regarding the potions, I'm afraid I have no right to inform you. Slughorn ignored him and continued searching with his eyes. He recalled Dumbledore's words. Then he noticed a young man, appearing to be exactly a second-year student, radiating the coldness typical of a Slytherin student. You are Jakes. You made all these. Jakes nodded calmly. It is I, Professor Slughorn. A genius. A true genius. Slughorn's plump face was covered in smiles. He looked at Jakes eagerly. My boy, I have a small club, the Slug Club. It gathers the most promising and well-connected students at Hogwarts. I believe you ought to join us. In the future, whether you want to enter the Ministry of Magic or need any connections, I can introduce you. Jakes listened quietly, his expression completely flat. He spoke calmly. Thank you for your invitation, Professor Slughorn. However, I refuse. Swift and decisive. Without a trace of hesitation. The smile on Slughorn's face instantly froze. Refuse. Someone actually refused an invitation to the Slug Club. W.Y. Slughorn's voice was filled with shock. My boy, you might not understand what this opportunity means. I understand perfectly. Jakes interrupted him. When have you ever considered the students in your painstaking management of your club? Isn't it just for your own convenience? Furthermore, I prefer to be alone. Because unnecessary socializing wastes my time researching potions. He nodded slightly and said no more. Slughorn stood alone, rooted to the spot. The old walrus's face flushed red and then turned pale. Such talent, yet unwilling to be used by him. This was simply a terrible waste of talent. Sigh. Since that's the case, I won't say any more. I'll buy some potions and be off. He selected a few potions. Then he paid the galleons, gave a heavy snort, and left. Lucius paced back and forth. Worry was etched on his brow. He stopped and looked at Jakes, who was flipping through an ancient magic book. Jakes. Lucius's voice was strained. That old man Slughorn, he was looking so carefully in the shop today. With his mastery of potion, what if he deciphers our formula? This was his biggest concern. The current potions were their first step to monopolizing the market. If it were deciphered so quickly, the consequences would be unimaginable. Then the advantage brought by the Malfoy family would be completely gone. Jakes didn't even lift his head. As if he wasn't worried at all. He won't be able to decipher it. Lucius frowned. Are you that confident? During his time as a student, Horace Slughorn was the potion class professor at Hogwarts and the dean of Slytherin House. Yes, I've looked into him, but so what? Jakes finally looked up, his gaze calm. Don't worry, Mr. Lucius. So what? Logically speaking, no one in the field of potion would dare to look down on this old walrus so much. But Jakes was too composed, forcing Lucius to suppress his doubts. He took a deep breath. I hope you're right. Meanwhile, Slughorn returned home. He went directly into his private potion room underground. Inside were various models of cauldrons and potion ingredients. Slughorn was drenched in sweat. On the workbench in front of him were several potions bought at a high price from Malfoy Jack's potions shop. Next to them were the failed attempts he had spent most of the night trying to replicate. All of them failed. Actually, they couldn't exactly be called failures. It was just that their effects didn't even reach 1/5 of the original. Impossible. How is this possible? Not even 60% of the efficacy. This is absolutely impossible. He muttered to himself, full of disbelief. Then he picked up the potion full of vitality again. The vital energy was so perfect. Comparing it to his own brewed potion, he couldn't help but feel frustrated. This is definitely not a problem with the formula. I admit, this formula has improved a lot compared to before, and the effect is better. But the half-missing efficacy is due to something else. What could it be? Could it be that spells were added to the potion? He couldn't understand. This kind of processing technique had never been heard of. The potion genius Dumbledore spoke of, where is the genius? He's clearly a monster. Finally, he slumped into his chair. Looking at the failed potions, his eyes were complex. More than anything, it was a pity. Why? Why would such a once-in-a-century potion genius refuse to join his club? If Jakes were in his club, what glory and connections would that bring? What a waste, what a terrible waste. He sighed heavily. His plump face was filled with gloom and unwillingness. A few days later, Jakes returned to the Malfoy manor. He placed a parchment in front of Lucius. This is the current brewing process for the main potions in the shop. It uses standard material requirements and production processes. Lucius was first delighted, then startled. Jakes, what is this? Before this, you weren't willing to hand over the formula. You were brewing the formulas yourself all summer. But now, he wouldn't abandon the cooperation, would he? Jakes explained. Don't be nervous. School is starting soon, and I need to return to Hogwarts. During this time, I can't personally produce everything all the time. What's more, to expand the scale, your use of the formula to guide production will better achieve capacity. Lucius picked up the parchment and examined it carefully. His brow furrowed slightly. Following this formula, will it be a one-to-one replication? What do you plan to do in the future? Jakes shook his head. Of course not. This is the basic version, you just need to be responsible for this part. The rest will still be handled by me. After school starts, I will make time to refine the catalyst. Jakes conjured a crystal bottle out of thin air and pushed it over. It contained a white, colorless, and odorless liquid. In the final stage, you only need to add 1/10,000th of the catalyst. The products you produce can still meet our current standards for efficacy. Lucius instantly understood. His eyes became incredibly complex. He understood that what was truly important was the catalyst in his hand. Jakes would never hand over this formula. But his mind suddenly became clear. Clever. Truly clever. This was still a mutually dependent and mutually balancing model. I understand. I will start working on the production line. Jakes nodded. Happy cooperation. King's Cross Station. Platform 9 3/4. The familiar Hogwarts Express was ready to depart. Jakes carried his luggage and moved through the crowd. He easily found an empty compartment. He had just sat down when the door was pulled open. Hermione Granger stood at the door, holding several thick books. Ginny Weasley was beside her. Jakes. Hermione's eyes lit up when she saw him. Can we sit here? We haven't seen Harry and Ron, and it's too noisy everywhere else. Ginny echoed. If we can, we won't disturb you. Jakes nodded. Please. Hermione and Ginny sat down. The next second, their gaze was immediately drawn to a stack of parchment Jakes had placed. An auto-scribing quill was hovering above the parchment. What are you writing? Hermione asked curiously. Ginny also quietly cast a curious glance. Jakes replied without lifting his head. A story. A story. Hermione's eyes widened. Jakes, the person who, in her impression, only pursued magic power, writing stories. This was even more unbelievable than Professor Snape giving out free candy. What kind of story? Hermione pressed, her curiosity piqued. Just then, the auto-scribing quill stopped again. Jakes generously showed them the content on the parchment. Do-Chi, 3rd stage. Do-Chi. Hermione's face was filled with confusion. What does that mean? Is it a new unit of magic power? I've never seen it in magical theory, or standard spells. Ginny was also full of bewilderment. Do-Chi. Spell or magic power? That doesn't seem right either. This kind of thing completely subverted their understanding. Jakes's lips curved slightly. Then he maintained a calm demeanor. A different power system concept. A concept of a different power system. Hermione pressed. Did ancient magic ever have assumptions completely different from current magic power research? Does 3rd stage represent a level? Although Ginny didn't speak, she felt that Jakes was very mysterious and difficult to fathom. Jakes, however, just shook his head. He had no intention of explaining further. I don't know. It's just a conjecture. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, adopting an attitude of refusing to talk. So, Hermione and Ginny also fell silent. The compartment grew quiet. Only the regular clatter of the train wheels remained. It was the second day of school. Hogwarts had returned to its usual rhythm. But in a corner of the Slytherin common room, the atmosphere was slightly different. Miles stood awkwardly in front of Jakes, foolishly rubbing his hands. Jakes. I haven't seen you all summer. I've been training spells. Since I signed the statute of secrecy for minors and couldn't use a wand, I practiced using knives and forks. I want to ask you to tutor me. Specifically, on spell combat. Jakes put down the ancient runes notebook in his hand and looked up at him. Why me? Because you're very strong. Miles's tone was eager. Everyone knows you trained Malfoy, and he made tremendous progress. Plus, you know a lot of things they don't teach in class. Desire was written on his face. Jakes scrutinized him for a moment. Combat isn't that complicated. He stood up, his wand having slipped into his palm unnoticed. The core is only 3 words. Speed. Before the words finished, a red light flashed from the tip of his wand. Expelliarmus. The spell was cast almost instantaneously. It was so fast that Miles didn't even see the movement clearly. Accuracy. The red light precisely struck Miles's wand. The wand dropped out from inside Miles's robes. Ruthlessness. His gaze swept over Miles. It carried a coldness that made the latter involuntarily take half a step back. But these 3 principles are all based on absolute proficiency. Jakes put away his wand. How long can your levitation charm keep a quill stable? How hard a stone can your shattering charm break? Miles opened his mouth but couldn't answer. Therefore, Jakes's tone was flat. Go back and practice every single basic spell 1,000 times. Until they are as natural as your breathing. Naturally, your combat skills will follow suit. Miles was stunned for a moment. Immediately, fighting spirit ignited in his eyes. Yes, I will definitely do it. He turned and ran out of the common room. It looked like he was heading straight for an empty classroom. Jakes sat down again. continuing to read his material. Evening. Headmaster's office. When Jakes received the owl's letter. He arrived early at this familiar place, he had visited several times last semester. Honey tea. No need, thank you, Professor. Dumbledore didn't insist. Jakes, I heard an interesting piece of news. During the holiday, you showed extraordinary interest in ancient magic, even going to Godric's Hollow. Jakes's expression didn't change, and he nodded. Yes, Professor. I thought of some interesting history and went to investigate. Indeed, history often contains unforgettable power. Dumbledore smiled. Then he mentioned a person. You also met Bathilda Bagshot. Yes, a knowledgeable historical author and a kind old woman. Jakes responded calmly, it was a brief encounter, but I benefited greatly. She truly is a living history. Dumbledore nodded. If you are still interested in ancient magic, perhaps you should visit her more often. She keeps many rare manuscripts that aren't even in the Hogwarts library. I will consider it, thank you for the reminder, Professor. Jakes readily agreed. He wasn't sure if Madame Bagshot had what he needed. But he wouldn't be returning to Godric's Hollow anytime soon. Dumbledore changed the subject. That's excellent. Exploring ancient magic makes one powerful. So, did you discover anything? Jakes shook his head. He couldn't possibly reply, I replicated the Philosopher's Stone. But facing the question, he had another question in mind. Professor Dumbledore, what do you know about ancient magic related to the soul? For example, if a person kills another, the soul splits, leading to eternal life. Dumbledore remained outwardly calm, but his blue eyes clearly flickered. Your scope of study is wider than I imagined. Among ancient magic, soul magic is inherently difficult to understand. Regarding your statement, it seems to exist, but I am also pondering how it is achieved. Otherwise, I would advise my old friend not to rely on the elixir of life from the Philosopher's Stone to sustain his life. However, the use of soul magic comes with a tremendous price. He seemed to be warning, yet also probing. Is that so? Jakes nodded. It truly is a tempting yet dangerous thing. Dumbledore finally nodded. Very well, maintain your caution, Jakes. Finally. The discussion about the soul ended here. Jakes did not mention Horcrux. This actually proved that Dumbledore was also still exploring and had not yet discovered the existence of Horcruxes. The conversation ended. Jakes left the headmaster's office. Returning to the Slytherin dormitory. Jakes took out the dark red Philosopher's Stone. He had hit a bottleneck. If I want to go further, then I must incorporate a soul. A soul. At this moment, Dumbledore's warning echoed in his ears. Maintain your caution. Jakes put away the Philosopher's Stone. If I were to master the soul without tearing it apart, would that be different? Killing is the desecration of the soul. Creation is the praise of the soul. Making the fake indistinguishable from the real, bestowing a soul, that is creation. This idea has already far surpassed material transformation. This is also a qualitative leap. But truly realizing this idea is incredibly difficult. In Jakes's eyes, helplessness and longing flickered. The road is long and arduous. Night. Jakes returned to the Slytherin dormitory from the library. Passing through a secluded corridor. Suddenly. Snap. A small figure with bulging eyes appeared, almost bumping into him. It was Dobby. The Malfoy family's house elf. As soon as Dobby saw Jakes, he slammed his head hard against the nearby stone wall. Bad Dobby. Bad Dobby. He cursed himself, pounding his head, almost bumped into the esteemed Mr. Jakes. Jakes frowned and stopped. Dobby. What are you doing here? Dobby's body trembled. Dobby. Dobby can't say. Bad Dobby promised to keep it a secret. It's full of danger here. Danger. Hogwarts. He thought of the diary and the basilisk. Jake's voice was calm. Where does the danger come from, Dobby? Tell me. Dobby can't say. Master will punish Dobby. He'll lock Dobby up. Dobby shook his head frantically. Jakes looked at him, his eyes growing cold. If you don't say. I'll write to Lucius Malfoy right now and tell him that his house elf is at Hogwarts trying to leak some secrets he doesn't want outsiders to know. Dobby froze instantly. His huge eyes filled with terror. No. Don't. Please. Don't tell Master. Whoosh. His tears immediately flowed out of fear. It's young Master. Young Master Draco. He He got a notebook, a talking notebook. The notebook says young master is the true heir of Slytherin, and it's going to teach him to speak the language of snakes. Dobby's voice trembled. His words were fragmented. But he didn't stop. Young master has been locking himself in his room lately, talking to that notebook. Sometimes, he even makes hissing sounds, it's so scary. And in the castle, the legendary monster in the castle is about to awaken. Harry Potter will also be in danger. The information was fragmented, but clear enough. This indicated that the diary had indeed begun to take effect. Draco Malfoy had become the new heir. Only Parseltongue teaching him. A hint of interest flashed in Jake's eyes. Enough. You may go. I won't tell your master about tonight's events. Dobby was as if granted a great pardon, bowing his head several times. Thank you, esteemed sir. Thank you. With a pop, he vanished. Whether he had truly left, Jakes didn't know. He stood firmly in place. Parseltongue, this is clearly Salazar Slytherin's bloodline ability. I didn't expect it could be taught. It seems Harry Potter also knows this. Is it the influence of the soul? The next day, lunchtime. At the Gryffindor long table. Harry Potter was discussing Lockhart's class with Ron and Hermione. The first two kept complaining, while only Hermione was listening attentively. A figure sat down beside them, making the three instantly fall silent. Jake spoke directly. Harry, I heard you can talk to snakes. Harry was stunned for a moment. A look of surprise appeared on his face. How did you know? No, that was just an accident. In his first year, he had once conversed with a python at the zoo. Then his magic surged, releasing the snake and causing his cousin Dudley to fall head over heels. Ron's eyes suddenly trembled. The language of snakes. Harry. Why did you never tell me? No. Hermione, however, frowned, seemingly pondering something. Jakes looked at Harry, his tone calm. That's Parseltongue, the power of Slytherin. Parseltongue. Slytherin. But show me. Just as Harry hesitated, Jakes directly made the request, giving the other party no time to prepare. No. It's a symbol of evil. Ron couldn't help but move away a bit. Shut up, Ron. Hermione warned him. She was eager to understand what was happening. Why did Jakes suddenly bring this up? I can't. Think back. Jakes guided him, the feeling of facing a snake and wanting it to obey you. Harry seemed calm, but he was already excited. He opened his mouth, trying to make a vague sound. It was very unnatural. Jakes listened intently, his eyes slightly narrowed. A moment later, he nodded. That's enough. Then, under the shocked gazes of Harry, Ron, and Hermione, Jakes turned and left, alone. He began to try this language. Hiss. Almost instantly. The sound was countless times more standard than Harry's. As if he was born with this language. He basically understood the pronunciation techniques of Parseltongue. That night, in the Slytherin common room, Jakes found Draco Malfoy. Draco had an arrogant look on his face. Jakes. Is there something? I heard you've made quite a harvest recently. Jakes smiled playfully, hinting at something. Draco's expression changed slightly, his eyes flickering. You know. Heir of Slytherin. Jake's tone was flat. Draco curled his lips into a smile, his courage growing. That's right. I am the heir of Slytherin. This semester, the true Slytherin will return. He didn't mention anything about the diary. But his boastful tone made him seem especially spirited. Congratulations. Draco's smile widened. But Jakes changed the subject. I need to warn you, Draco. Making deals with ancient beings requires a price. I hope you can stay clear-headed at times. Draco's smile stiffened. Also, since you are the heir, you should know that Salazar Slytherin left more than just a name at Hogwarts. Draco's pupils suddenly constricted. The color drained from his face instantly. The basilisk. How did you? Clearly, he had only learned of its existence from the diary. But Jakes had directly exposed it. That's not important. He patted Draco's shoulder, with a force that was neither light nor heavy. Stay safe, Mr. Heir. With that, he turned and left, leaving Draco Malfoy standing alone. The smugness on his face had long vanished. Only some bewilderment and uncertainty remained. The defense against the dark arts classroom. Ever since Lockhart became the defense against the dark arts class professor, His classroom was filled with an exaggerated potion scent. Behind the podium was a massive portrait. He flashed his pearly white teeth and spoke loudly. Children, today, we are going to discuss the third chapter of Traveling with Vampires. How I triumphed over them among the vampires. This immediately involves one or two small, practical spells. Most of the students below the stage were zoning out. Except for the young witches. Jakes was expressionless, though inwardly quite helpless. When Lockhart began repeating for the third time how he had defeated that vampire, Jakes raised his hand. Seeing someone raise their hand, Lockhart's smile became even brighter. Ah, this young wizard, sir. Your name is. Pardon me, I usually find it hard to remember other people's names, unless you want to know how I concocted my unique hair gel. A burst of laughter erupted in the classroom. Jakes shook his head. Professor Lockhart, I am not interested in your personal care secrets. I want to know, since you have such extensive practical experience. What should we do if we face dark arts creatures like the Kappa or the Hinkypunk? Or even what spell, and how to specifically deal with them? After all, the vampire species is not exactly common. The somewhat sharp question made all the students look at Lockhart. Hermione also frowned. Lockhart opened his mouth, but it didn't stop him from showing his pristine white teeth. Well, an excellent defense master focuses on improvisation. You must flexibly apply all the knowledge you possess based on the environment and the opponent's status. For example, when I dealt with that vampire, I used no fewer than 17 different. So, Jakes interrupted him, pointing out the flaw sharply. I agree with that point. Combat is highly random, but improvisation. Lockhart let out a small huff. But professional courtesy kept the smile on his face. Real combat is complicated. Children, remember that. However, he desperately tried to save face and quickly changed the subject. Alright, let's continue to chapter 4, where I talk about how I made a female vampire burst into tears with a single sonnet. Jakes did not press the matter further. He simply lowered his head and continued writing and drawing on his parchment. Sigh, trying to rely on Professor Lockhart is truly harder than reaching the heavens. The corridor after class. Hermione, clutching several of Lockhart's books, caught up to Jakes. Jakes. Jakes stopped and looked back at her. Were you a bit too rude in class just now? Professor Lockhart is a very experienced. Experienced in what? Jakes countered, in his books. Hermione was momentarily speechless. Then she changed the subject, a hint of curiosity on her face. I wanted to ask about that story you were writing before. The one with the Do-Chi, how is the progress? Jakes shook his head. No progress recently. In fact, the quick notes quill was highly efficient. Roughly mapping out the plot he still remembered from his mind. He had even completed the majority of it. It was all famous segments. The settings of Do Not Bully the Young and Poor, Buddha's Fury Fire Lotus, and Heavenly Flame. However, he still needed to polish it and integrate it into the current world so that wizards reading it wouldn't find it too jarring. But he didn't need to tell Hermione that. Hermione let out a disappointed, oh. Alright. If you finish it and need a reader or advice, you can come to me. Jakes nodded calmly. Actually, advice wasn't really necessary. But he agreed to her suggestion anyway. Okay. You will read the contents of this book later. With that, Hermione looked pleased and walked away, clutching Lockhart's great works. The other class that afternoon. Potion class. Snape glided silently between the cauldrons. In this class, the second-year students were required to brew a simple boil-cure potion. Weasley. If you don't want your cauldron to explode, you'd better remove those porcupine quills from the fire before adding them. Or is it that your barren brain cannot process two instructions simultaneously? Ron frantically complied, his face turning bright red. Until the end of class bell finally rang. The students, as if granted amnesty, quickly cleaned their equipment and fled. However, as Jakes prepared to leave, Snape's voice stopped him. Jakes, stay behind. What is it, Professor? In the empty classroom. Snape walked up to Jakes, his gaze sweeping over the nearly perfect potion Jakes had brewed. I heard. Slughorn extended an invitation to you. Yes, Professor. Facing Snape's habitually icy tone, Jakes showed little emotion. And you refused. The Slug Club gathers Hogwarts' most valuable students. There you would find the connections you need. After all, your closeness to the Malfoy family is for this very purpose, isn't it? A potions shop, an interesting concept. When he mentioned the later subject, his tone was full of derision. I don't need connections. Snape sneered, sounding even more mocking. Say whatever you like. How you make your arrogant choices will affect your future. He fell silent for a moment. It was the first time Jakes had seen Snape show hesitation. Then, Jakes. Regarding potions, regarding power, what is it that you truly pursue? It wasn't a question. It wasn't a test. It was more like an inquiry, filled with complex emotion. Snape's question echoed in the spacious classroom. What is it that you truly pursue? Jakes raised his eyes, meeting Snape's black gaze. The usual sarcasm was gone. However, he did not answer immediately. After a long moment, he offered two words. Power. These two words were without embellishment. They directly expressed Jakes's desire. Power. Snape repeated softly. Jakes spoke. Potions are tools, they help me complete my initial accumulation. Money, connections, and status. And all of this will eventually be converted into power. Snape stared intently at him, then nodded. Very well. But power comes at a price. You may go, Jakes. Jakes nodded slightly, without any lingering sentiment. He turned and walked out of the potion classroom. He wasn't curious about Snape's unusual behavior. After all, that old bat is extremely cunning. The Hogwarts Quidditch pitch was bustling with activity. It was the first official match of the new school year. Slytherin versus Hufflepuff. In the sky, the Slytherin team members were riding brand new Nimbus 2001s. They were particularly eye-catching. This was yet another generous sponsorship from the Malfoy family. Draco Malfoy, as the Seeker, hovered in midair. His gaze, however, was somewhat unfocused. Perhaps because the golden snitch hadn't appeared yet. He was completely distracted. Suddenly, Malfoy. Watch the left wing. Captain Marcus Flint's roar startled him awake. Draco snapped back to attention, instinctively steering his broom to the left. But he couldn't pick up speed at all. He failed to assist in defense several times during Hufflepuff's attacks. Ultimately, thanks to the superior performance of the Nimbus 2001, he barely managed to catch the snitch. Slytherin won the match. We won. Flint slapped his back hard, roaring loudly. Other teammates also gathered around to celebrate. But Draco's face showed no joy. He merely forced a perfunctory smile. Just a small skirmish, why get so excited? His teammates didn't quite understand. But Draco's mind was preoccupied with other matters. Power. True power lies in control. Parseltongue is merely the key. The diary's commands constantly echoed in his mind. Such an important task. Compared to winning a House Cup match, the latter naturally seemed childish and insignificant. His heart was no longer on this Quidditch pitch. Sixth floor of the castle. In an abandoned, empty classroom. Jake stood in the center of the room. His lips moved slightly, emitting a series of fluid hissing sounds. Parseltongue. Essentially, this was a special magical language. For him, as long as he analyzed the pronunciation techniques, mastering it was only a matter of time. Creak. The classroom door was gently pushed open a crack. Miles suddenly poked his head in. Jakes, are you practicing spells in here? I. His words stopped abruptly. Because he clearly heard the hissing sound from Jakes. This feeling made his scalp tingle. His face instantly turned pale, and his feet froze at the doorway. Jakes stopped practicing, turned his head, and looked at him calmly. What's wrong? Jakes. Miles' voice trembled. The sound you just made. How is it like the sound of a snake talking? Miles swallowed. He was Muggle-born and didn't know much about the legends of the wizarding world. But Parseltongue itself was enough to cause fear. Jakes watched his terrified expression. Haven't you heard of the legend of the heir of Slytherin? The heir of Slytherin. What is that? Legend has it that Hogwarts has a wondrous tale. Every now and then, a heir of Slytherin will be born from Slytherin house, bringing slaughter. Muggles, that is, wizards like us, will die by Slytherin. No. Will I be targeted by them? Miles' legs went weak, and he nearly collapsed. Immense fear gripped him. Therefore, I am practicing Parseltongue to deceive them. Jakes told a lie. Then I I'll pretend I didn't see you. I'll just make it up now. He shrieked, turned, and tried to flee. Stop. Jakes. Jakes walked up to him, looking down at him. Parseltongue is just a language. Do you want to learn it? Miles was stunned. The fear on his face was replaced by immense bewilderment. Learn this. Although it's not very useful, understanding what your opponent knows is also a form of self-protection. Jake's tone was seductive. Would you rather be ignorant of danger, and be a passive mudblood? Mudbloods are the very people they want to kill. The last few words pierced Miles' heart. His fear was gradually replaced by other emotions. Then he gritted his teeth. I'll learn. Late at night. Hogwarts Castle was silent. The caretaker, Argus Filch, carried his oil lamp. Following him was his scrawny cat, Madame Norris. They were on their nightly patrol in the corridor. Because they had heard some movement. Something's up, my sweet. Madame Norris arched her back, letting out a soft purr. Filch tiptoed over, shining his oil lamp. It was Draco Malfoy, standing there in his pajamas, eyes vacant. Malfoy. Filch shrieked, his face alight with excitement, wandering the corridors late at night instead of sleeping. Violating school rules. Draco was startled awake. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by arrogance. I was just going to the lavatory. I took a wrong turn. Do you know what sleepwalking is? He didn't dare to be too excessive with a Malfoy. He just prattled on, making notes and threatening to deduct points. Don't make excuses, you won't get away with it. Tomorrow, you'll receive a detention notice from Professor Snape. Afterward, he left with his cat. At this moment, Draco angrily returned to the Slytherin common room. His face was filled with irritation. That fooled old man. That fooled stupid cat. I was sleepwalking again. Ever since he gained the diary's approval. He would occasionally sleepwalk at Malfoy Manor. This feeling was too strange. He was supposed to be gaining power, so why was it turning out like this? But he couldn't figure out the reason. And he still hadn't found any clues related to the basilisk or the key. However, on that very same night, Filch, incredibly lucky, caught a second sleepwalker in another corridor. Ginny Weasley. The next day, the news quietly spread. Jakes paused when he heard the news. He found it somewhat amusing. He even couldn't help but mock. Two heirs. And they ended up sleepwalking together in the middle of the night, only to be caught by Filch, all at once. This arrangement is truly brilliant. A few days later, Jakes closed the last piece of parchment. The quick notes quill stopped working and lay quietly to the side. A thick stack of manuscripts lay on the desk. The title on the top title page read, Rebirth in the Magical World, The Battle to Break the Dark Wizard. He bound the manuscript. That afternoon, he found Hermione in the library. Hermione looked up, saw Jakes, and greeted him. Jakes. Is something wrong? Jakes handed over the manuscript. I promised you could read it after the story was finished. Hermione was first surprised and delighted, then picked up the manuscript and read the title aloud. Rebirth in the Magical World, The Battle to Break the Dark Wizard. Is this the story you wrote? She opened the first page. As soon as she started reading, she became completely engrossed. The protagonist of the story was a heavily bullied Slytherin student. By chance, he mastered a new power outside the magical system, Do-Chi. He combined this power with the 3 unforgivable curses of the dark arts. He created the unforgivable strange flames. For example, the Nether Poison Flame, combined with the Avada Kedavra curse. The Bone-Corroding Cold Flame, combined with the Cruciatus curse. The Soul-Seizing Illusion Flame, combined with the Imperio curse. Relying on these terrifying powers, he crushed his opposition and eventually became the new generation's Dark Lord. And then ruled the entire wizarding world. Hermione abruptly slammed the manuscript shut. Her face was filled with shock and disbelief. Jakes. How could you write a story like this? This is too dark. And even the methods described here, the way the unforgivable curses are merged with unknown powers, it sounds too dangerous. This is practically promoting the dark arts. Jakes calmly took back the manuscript, his tone completely flat. A story is just a story. It depicts a possibility, not a guide. Besides, Do-Chi doesn't exist in the wizarding world. Hermione looked conflicted and hesitated for a moment. But, Jakes interrupted her. Do you think covering it up and fearing it will make the dark arts disappear? Only by understanding the darkness can we better fight the darkness. The protagonist in the story only went to extremes because of his despair regarding the existing magical education system. This, in itself, is a form of introspection. Hermione opened her mouth, intending to argue. But she realized Jake's words seemed quite reasonable. But the values are left for the readers to judge themselves. Jake's execution was astonishing. He did not hesitate to send the manuscript of Rebirth in the Magical World, The Battle to Break the Dark Wizard, via owl, to the publishing house under the Daily Prophet. To everyone's surprise, the publisher reviewed the manuscript efficiently and accepted it. A few days later, the first chapter of the novel was prominently featured on the front page of the Daily Prophet. And it used a massive, eye-catching headline. At the same time, it included a short review written by the famous reporter Rita Skeeter, a world-shaking genius. The Path of the Dark Lord, penned by a Slytherin first year. The article instantly ignited public opinion. Rita Skeeter herself quickly applied to come to Hogwarts and cornered Jakes in a classroom. The quick notes quill beside her was already fluttering impatiently in the air. My dear boy. What truly astonishing imagination. Tell me, did the inspiration for this masterpiece come from a deep-seated desire for power within you? Or did being Muggle-born and joining Slytherin place some kind of unknown pressure on you, prompting fantasies of turning to the dark side? Her questions were sharp. Jakes, however, remained indifferent, refusing to fall into the trap. Madam Skeeter, this is merely a work of literature. The inspiration comes from contemplating magic. As for anything else, I have no comment. Then, no matter how Rita tried to probe, Jake's answers were watertight. There is a story in the Muggle world called Hamlet. This means that for 1,000 Muggles, there are 1,000 Hamlets. The story in this book is entirely fantasy. If you intend to accuse me of pursuing the dark arts, then save your breath. In the end, Rita could only leave disgruntled. However, this novel quickly became a hit. Rebirth in the Magical World, The Battle to Break the Dark Wizard first became popular within Slytherin House. That is so cool. Do-chi. The unforgivable strange flames. This is the true power we Slytherins should pursue. Senior Jakes is truly extraordinary. Young wizards could be seen everywhere, holding the newspaper supplement and reading it. Their eyes were full of excitement and longing. This trend soon spread to the other houses. The Gryffindor common room. Hey, Ron, did you see this? The one written by Jakes from Slytherin. I glanced at it. It's too wicked. Turning the unforgivable curses into fire. But, why is it kind of exciting? At the Ravenclaw long table. Analyzing it from a magical theory perspective, materializing curse energy and imbuing it with the properties of fire, though extreme, is not entirely impossible. He is challenging the boundaries of existing magical ethics. Hufflepuff students. They were secretly passing copies around in private. They were both frightened and overwhelmingly curious. This trend finally caught the attention of the professors. During potion class, Professor Snape was as gloomy as ever. But surprisingly, he did not intervene, acting as if none of it concerned him. Only Professor McGonagall couldn't sit still. After the Transfiguration class ended, she sternly called Jakes over. Mr. Jakes, please come with me. Yes, Professor. Professor McGonagall looked at Jakes, her brow deeply furrowed. Her expression was extremely solemn. Regarding that novel you published, Rebirth in the Magical World, The Battle to Break the Dark Wizard. I believe that this type of book should not be read within the school, as the dark arts powers it promotes and glamorizes are unsuitable for students. This is highly inappropriate, especially during this sensitive period. Her gaze was sharp, filled with worry and reproach. Lord Voldemort had only just reappeared last semester, causing such massive trouble, and his whereabouts are still unknown. And yet, Jakes wrote a work like this. Jakes stood tall, his eyes calm. His tone was neither humble nor arrogant. Professor McGonagall. This is merely a work of literature, a fictional story. The core of the story is not to promote darkness. It actually serves as a warning. Only when wizards understand what darkness looks like can people be more clearly aware of why they should not follow the path of the dark arts. This holds profound cautionary value. Professor McGonagall was stunned. A question mark slowly appeared above her head. Sometimes, she felt Jakes was too clear-headed. Because when interpreted this way, there didn't seem to be a major problem. After all, this was Muggle thinking, something they couldn't fully grasp. Regardless, I hope you keep in mind that you had better not be writing an autobiography. You should even try to avoid the possibility of your work causing chaos and danger. I understand, Professor. I will remind the readers. Subsequently, he left the deputy headmistress's office. Professor McGonagall watched his receding figure and shook her head helplessly. Although this was only a novel, it even involved powers that didn't exist in the wizarding world, which was how those so-called strange flame abilities were created. But she finally recognized the truth in Dumbledore's words. Jakes, this student, is far more complex than you imagine. The only thing left to wait for, is his own choice in the future. You will understand, Minerva. Hogwarts Castle. The novel craze surrounding rebirth in the magical world, the battle to break the Dark Wizard was still ongoing. Naturally, this influence came from Jakes's great work. Strange concepts like, Dochi Stage 3 and 3 Great Unforgivable Strange Flames attracted many people. Its popularity even surpassed Lockhart's works. And on this day, Lockhart himself also received a sample copy of the competitor's book sent by the publisher. It made him read so intently he forgot to eat and sleep. The defense against the dark arts professor's office. Lockhart was extremely annoyed. Trash. Broken engagement. Don't bully a young man for being poor. Strange flames. What is this? He couldn't help but scratch his curly hair. Making it messy. How could this kind of fantasy story, completely devoid of elegance, be more popular than my traveling with trolls? He couldn't understand. I, Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. The fame of a genius author like me, is actually being overshadowed by a second-year student. This is simply an insult to my career as an author. A powerful sense of jealousy and resentment drove him. He adjusted his expression and put on that charming smile again. He strode out of the office. He caught Jakes in the corridor after potion class. Jakes, my dear boy. Lockhart's voice was enthusiastic. Jakes stopped and looked at him expressionlessly. Professor Lockhart. Lockhart forced out an even bigger smile. He tried hard to look as if he were mentoring a rising star in the wizard writer circle. I have just read your story. It has great imagination, I must say. Therefore, as a senior best-selling author, I wanted to offer you some guidance. Don't get complacent, this achievement isn't even 1,000th of mine. And I also wanted to discuss with you how you write such, well, fantastical content. As you know, my works are all based on real adventure experiences. In his words, he still didn't forget to boast about himself. Jakes looked at him, completely expressionless. Imagination can compensate for any flaw. Things far more imaginative than magic are what allow wizards to immerse themselves and fantasize. He spoke slowly. He expressed a view completely contrary to Lockhart's worldview. What's more, my work evokes a grander sense of an alternate world. Instead of. He paused. Lockhart's expression was starting to falter. Endless self-praise. Buzz. Lockhart felt his brain crash for a moment. Haha. You are absolutely right. But he was somewhat agitated. This guy, what does he know? Or has he figured something out? Because Lockhart knew clearly that his works were not based on personal experience. He was proficient in the incredible memory charm. So he stole these exciting stories from many different adventurer wizards. However, more people prefer real adventures. Just like every one of my experiences is real. All of them involved me risking my life. I was just explaining a writing technique, Professor. Jakes interrupted his defense. That's right. This is just a different writing style. Lockhart saw that he had managed to gloss over it. He let out a long breath. So, Professor, do you have anything else you'd like to discuss? If not, I'm going to my next class, or I'll be late. Jakes asked in return. No. That's all. You go to class. All right. He stopped looking at the sweating Lockhart. He turned and headed toward the herbology gardens. Afterward, Lockhart stood frozen in place. He felt the back of his robes were soaked with cold sweat. And could only manage a hollow, awkward laugh. Ha, ha ha, kids these days, they certainly know how to joke. Inside the Slytherin common room, Miles found Jakes, his face full of excitement. He tightly clutched several pages of transcribed story drafts. His eyes were shining, and he was too excited to speak coherently. This book is incredible. Do-Chi. Strange flames. This power system is so cool. It's much more exciting than the magic we learn. Jakes raised his eyes but said nothing. Miles couldn't help but lean closer. He lowered his voice, carrying a hint of anticipation. Since you can write such a realistic book, do you actually possess this power? Can you teach me how to cultivate Do-Chi? Wouldn't it be easier for us to deal with the heir of Slytherin and the monster this way? Jakes shook his head. His tone was firm. No. That's a story, Miles. Distinguish between fiction and reality. Sure enough, Professor McGonagall's worries had come true. However, Miles wasn't pursuing the path of the dark arts. As a boy going through puberty, who wouldn't want to acquire strange flames? Instead of pursuing Do-Chi and strange flames, you should face reality. Facing the dangers of the magical world requires solid magical knowledge and mastering more spells to cope, rather than hoping for non-existent power. Miles opened his mouth. The words on the tip of his tongue were all swallowed. Finally, the excitement on his face was replaced by disappointment. I understand. Still, your novel is truly brilliant. Jakes ignored him. His gaze fell upon the flames burning in the fireplace. He knew that rebirth in the magical world, the battle to break the dark wizard, would cause a stir. And bring him more galleons outside his potion shop. But for him, this was merely an insignificant interlude. After the feast, one night, Harry was wandering alone in the corridor. He didn't return to the Gryffindor Tower until late at night. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound. It drew him to search everywhere. Just as he passed through the second-floor corridor, his foot suddenly kicked something stiff. Lumos. He looked down, his wand lit up. The next second, he gasped. It was Madame Norris, Filch's cat, hanging upside down on the wall. What happened? The cat. Its body was stiff, as if it were dead. And Harry noticed some writing appearing on the wall next to it. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Just as he hadn't figured out what was going on, a voice rang out. You, my cat, my Madame Norris. Filch appeared and quickly rushed to the cat's side. He suddenly looked up, his eyes fixed on Harry. You killed her. No, it wasn't me. Harry quickly defended himself, his face pale. I just got here. She was already like this. Lies. Filch shrieked. I saw you holding your wand. And that Malfoy boy. Draco Malfoy. I caught him sleepwalking in the middle of the night last month. Sneaking around. And that red-haired Weasley girl. Ginny Weasley. I caught her once too. You strange people, now you've killed Madame Norris. Perhaps anger had clouded his mind. Filch began to suspect everyone indiscriminately. These three had been very suspicious lately. But Harry wouldn't admit it. It wasn't me. The roar echoed through the corridor, immediately attracting many people. Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall, Snape, they had to analyze the situation at hand. Especially under Filch's accusation. Calm down, Filch. Madame Norris isn't dead. She's just been hit by a Petrificus Totalis. However, Filch naturally wouldn't believe it. I want them punished. It wasn't me. Harry kept explaining, but couldn't give a specific reason. Finally, Dumbledore had to handle the matter properly, but a sense of panic began to spread throughout Hogwarts. Because rumors about the Chamber of Secrets and the legend of the heir of Slytherin had quietly begun to spread. The Chamber of Secrets. The heir of Slytherin. A monster. In the Slytherin common room. The atmosphere was heavy. Now, Slytherin was almost pushed into the spotlight. Miles's face was pale, and he cautiously leaned close to Jake's, his voice extremely low, even trembling. Jake's, that. Madame Norris, those words on the wall. Could this be the legend of the heir of Slytherin? Has it begun? Jake's nodded slightly. Yes. A simple word made Miles's heart sink. But I haven't learned Parseltongue yet. What should I do now? You say. I'm a Slytherin, will the monster spare me? Jakes shrugged. I don't know. I'm Muggle-born too. Facing this upheaval, The two Muggle wizards could only pray for the best. Meanwhile, in the Gryffindor Tower, Ron Weasley stared at Harry in disbelief. Parseltongue. You can talk to snakes. Harry. Only the heir of Slytherin has that ability. Everyone says so. I'm not. Harry retorted angrily. I can. But that doesn't mean I'm the lunatic who opened the Chamber of Secrets. Ron stood his ground. Then how do you explain it? Ron. That's not fair. Hermione Granger stood between the two. Her head ached with frustration. That doesn't prove anything. Stop arguing. Then, the three parted ways unhappily. Because of this incident, a rift appeared between Ron and Harry. Hermione watched Harry suffer, isolated and helpless, but could do nothing. However, she thought of someone. Jake's. About Parseltongue. How did you know Harry had this ability? And why did you want to learn this thing? You know, now Harry Jakes put down his quill and looked up at her. As if he had long anticipated her arrival. Parseltongue is Salazar Slytherin's famous bloodline ability. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, from the Potter family, naturally wouldn't be a descendant of Slytherin. So he shouldn't possess this talent. The reason he does, proves that talent isn't absolutely unique, there are other reasons for it, so you should ask Harry, not me. He paused, looking into Hermione's eyes, and clearly articulated a few words. And I've learned it too. Are you going to suspect me of being the heir of Slytherin now too? Hermione's breath hitched. She was utterly shocked. You. Does this prove that Harry is definitely not the one who attacked Madame Norris? Jakes said nothing, as if to say the result was obvious. Do you still need to ask? Finally, Hermione let out a long breath. All right, I understand. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. That's right. Jakes could do it too. Although it sounded incredible, this proved that Harry couldn't be the culprit. But who was the true heir? Who attacked Madame Norris? All right. I'll go investigate again myself. Goodbye. She turned and ran quickly out of the library. She began searching for new evidence. Jakes didn't pay attention. Instead, he thought of an interesting matter. As for the two heirs of Slytherin now, who was responsible for this mess? Mrs. Norris's petrification caused an uproar at Hogwarts for quite some time. Especially for Draco Malfoy. After the initial shock wore off, a wave of irritation washed over him. Because he was the heir of Slytherin, designated by the diary. But he hadn't opened the so-called Chamber of Secrets. So, who else could it be besides him? Was it that guy, Harry Potter? Or had the diary tricked him? After all, he knew he certainly wasn't the only heir. This worry kept Draco awake. So he lay in bed, using his wand to illuminate the diary in front of him. Or rather, the single page he had hastily torn from the diary during the summer holiday. Now, he questioned the blank page. Speak. Tell me. Is there another heir? Is it Harry Potter? You must answer me. You promised to give me power. On the page, the ink began to bleed out, forming blurry characters. The fragmented content appeared incredibly chaotic. Inside Draco's mind. Incomplete. Special. But, not. My chosen. The information was fragmented. Vague and unclear. Draco groaned in frustration. What does that mean? Explain yourself. What are you hiding from me? Afterward. No matter how much Draco Malfoy urged the single diary page. The incomplete page could only provide limited information and power. This made Draco curse under his breath. The next day. Draco stopped Jax. His expression was grim. Jax, something isn't right. The diary you know about, it seems to have chosen someone else. I haven't opened the Chamber of Secrets, and I haven't found what I wanted. His inquiries the previous night had been fruitless. He suddenly thought of Jax, desperate to get answers from him. Jax listened, a flash of understanding crossing his eyes. I see. But why are you so certain? You received the diary's approval, and the diary should be with you. Shouldn't you be hearing its instructions? Draco Malfoy snorted. Did you think I would just steal something belonging to my father right there in the manor? Of course, I could only tear off one page. Jax couldn't help but chuckle. Only one page. So what you received, was just a set of incomplete instructions. In that case, the diary must have guided another heir, who is currently inside Hogwarts Castle. Why don't you investigate yourself? Has anything strange been happening lately? He looked pointedly at Draco. Draco Malfoy suddenly had a moment of realization. Are you talking about Ginny Weasley? Lately, she's been sleepwalking a lot, acting confused, and she even served detention with me. Draco felt as if he had grasped a life raft. And so, after potions class ended, he cornered Ginny Weasley, who had also just finished class. Weasley, I hear you recently acquired a treasure. A black, old diary. Ginny's face instantly went pale. Her eyes darted away, and her voice lacked any confidence. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. Draco took a step closer, pressuring her. Is the diary with you? Hand it over. It doesn't belong to you. That's what I saw first. He couldn't explicitly state the diary's true origin or purpose. So he could only demand it aggressively. No, I don't have it. Ginny backed away under his pressure, her eyes instantly turning red, tears welling up. Get away from me. Why are you crying? Guilty conscience. Give it to me. Draco Malfoy remained relentless. Her reaction confirmed that Weasley was definitely involved. Stop it, Malfoy. A furious shout rang out. Ron Weasley rushed over, shoved Draco aside, and shielded Ginny behind him. What are you doing to my sister? You filthy snake. Get lost, Weasley. Draco, fueled by anger, ignored him. I'm talking to her. Tell her to hand over what she stole. You're talking nonsense. Want a fight? I'm ready. The conflict instantly escalated. Students nearby gathered to watch the spectacle. Eventually, the fight was broken up by Professor McGonagall, who had rushed over upon hearing the commotion. Malfoy. Weasley. You were openly brawling in the corridor, violating school rules. 50 points deducted from Slytherin and 50 from Gryffindor. 1 month of detention. That night, Ginny Weasley, her eyes red and puffy, finally remembered Jax. She mustered up enormous courage and sought him out. Jax. I might have caused trouble. Jax didn't react much. Ginny haltingly recounted the story of the diary. How the writing appeared, why her memory kept becoming hazy, all the fear and confusion she had suppressed for so long, she poured it all out to Jax. It seems to have a mind of its own. I can't control it. Mrs. Norris. I don't know if it was me. Jax listened quietly. He spoke in a steady, reassuring tone. That is a very dangerous dark arts object. It is influencing you, controlling you. Hand it over to me. I will take it directly to Headmaster Dumbledore. He is the only one who can safely handle something like this. His expression was sincere. His tone carried an undeniable sense of reliability. Only then can you be free of it and safe. Ginny's eyes widened. But you might be controlled too. I can't just give it to you, let me take it to Dumbledore myself. Jax shook his head. If you didn't trust me, you wouldn't have come to me, right? Ginny fell silent for a moment. That was true. Whether it was the time Jax protected her a year ago, or the rumors about him. Jax was a powerful wizard. As for the suggestion to hand it over to Headmaster Dumbledore, that was the most correct choice. Then, with trembling hands, she pulled the diary out from her robes. She quickly thrust it into Jax's hands. Thank you, Jax. I have to go now. Jax looked down. The book in his hands felt restless, brimming with suppressed energy. Finally, it's mine. I couldn't steal it back at Malfoy Manor, but now I can take it legitimately. As for handing it over to Dumbledore, I'll do that after I've finished studying it. In this way, the diary completely and utterly fell into Jax's possession. He had acquired this dangerous item quite reasonably. After all, this was a Horcrux, and the soul magic contained within it was priceless. To possess it, study it, and extract its full value, that was his true purpose. Jax cast a concealment charm on the belt. This would minimize the attention the belt drew from others. Then, he took out the black diary. That familiar, tempting soul fluctuation once again attempted to burrow into his mind. You have obtained me, the complete me. We can continue our previous discussion about souls and power. Tom Riddle's voice sounded. Jax responded mentally. It seems you are quite aware of your situation. Show me your value, otherwise, I don't mind handing you over to the old headmaster. A brief silence followed. Immediately after, a powerful suction force surged forth. It acted directly on the spiritual level. Jax did not resist. The next second, the scene changed. The surroundings felt vintage, as if viewed through an old film filter. He stood in a familiar corridor, also within Hogwarts Castle. Ahead, a handsome, black-haired boy stood with icy eyes in front of a bathroom door. He spoke in fluent Parseltongue. Tom Riddle. Parseltongue. Immediately, the door opened. A gigantic, scaly snake writhed in the shadows. Then the memory leapt forward. A girl with two thick braids was crying, Myrtle Warren, as she saw yellow serpentine eyes glow in the darkness. After the deadly gaze, there was no scream. Myrtle collapsed, losing all sign of life. Next, Hagrid looked utterly innocent. Aragog the spider was identified as the monster. Riddle stood in the shadows. Headmaster Dippet accused Hagrid, and Riddle received a special services to the school award for it. This was the Chamber of Secrets incident 50 years ago. His consciousness was pulled away. Returning to reality. Jax's eyes were sharp. That was a very interesting history lesson. Do you see? This is true power. Controlling life and death, framing others. The secrets of this diary go far beyond that. We can. What you call power, and the secrets of the diary, Jax interrupted him, are merely despicable methods used to kill innocent people. You don't understand, the basilisk, which only the heir of Slytherin can summon, is Salazar Slytherin's creation. The young Riddle was ambitious. To be honest, he was somewhat deranged. I am not interested in your so-called basilisk. Let's talk about this diary instead. Why can it hold your soul? Tom Riddle, you existed 50 years ago, but shouldn't you be dead now? Jax was extremely impolite. This caused the diary to express some dissatisfaction. How much do you know? Souls persist, they cannot die, and resurrection is possible. Jax understood soul magic to mean that creating a Horcrux grants immortality. But he craved the process and the principles behind it. Currently, Riddle seemed to be enraged. It seemed difficult to get the desired information from the diary now. Jax smiled. Enough, and you know too little. Meanwhile, on the other side of the castle, Ginny Weasley had thrown away the diary. Although she was free from its control, her body was still weak. She found Madame Pomfrey and remained in the hospital wing for observation. On the other side, Draco Malfoy was viewed as the only heir of Slytherin. In the dead of night, he once again received a command from the page of the diary. He slipped out of the Slytherin common room again. Following the instructions, he arrived at a place. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, where the pipes were broken and water pooled everywhere. Soft sobs echoed around him. Draco stood dazedly in front of the sink. He took a deep breath, facing the serpentine faucet handle. He began trying hard to imitate the pronunciation of Parseltongue. Hiss. Open. The sound was dry and distorted. There was no response. Hiss SS. Unlock. The tone was bizarre. It sounded more like a deflating balloon. He tried repeatedly, yet the sink remained completely still. Suddenly, Myrtle's ghost floated out of a stall, mocking him. Oh Tilda, another silly boy. Are you the heir of Slytherin too? Oh ho ho Tilda, but your voice is dreadful. You sound like a dying cat. Draco was both angry and anxious. After failing, he could only vent his frustration toward Myrtle. Shut up. You ugly, four-eyed girl. Inside the Gryffindor common room. Hermione Granger closed Hogwarts, a history. This doesn't make sense. If Draco Malfoy really is the heir of Slytherin, why is he acting so sneakily? Furthermore, we need concrete evidence. Ron said grumpily. What more evidence do we need? He's so brazen every day. In all of Slytherin, he's the most outrageous. Is there anyone else besides him? Harry looked somewhat dazed. He was still troubled by the rumors circulating about him. He couldn't help it. After all, he was the first to stumble upon Mrs. Norris being petrified. So what should we do? Ron scoffed. Why don't we just go straight up to him and say, "Hey, Malfoy, are you the heir of the Chamber of Secrets?" Hermione's eyes lit up. She had already devised a brilliant plan. Of course, we won't ask directly. We can make him confess himself. How? Harry asked curiously. Polyjuice potion. Hermione uttered the name, but the other two seemed unfamiliar with it. Oh, dear. We can transform into Slytherin students, sneak into their common room, and gather information. Ron gasped. There's a potion that magical. Hermione's gaze flickered towards Harry. Harry, perhaps, we could ask Jax for help. His potion skills. Harry immediately shook his head. No, Hermione. We absolutely cannot ask him. Hermione, however, was adamant. It's the most efficient method. Because brewing polyjuice potion takes too long and is extremely difficult. If we ask him for help, we might be able to shorten the time. Without waiting for the agreement of the other two. Her decisiveness was astonishing. She immediately went to the library and cornered Jax. Jax, we need your help. Hermione got straight to the point. She quickly laid out the entire plan. After listening, Jax showed no surprise on his face. Polyjuice potion. A very clever idea. But why should I help you? Hermione said urgently. To find the truth. For the safety of Hogwarts. That is your goal, not mine. Jax's tone was flat. Help requires a price. Moreover, you plan to impersonate Slytherins right in front of a Slytherin. What do you want? Hermione paused. Jax's gaze fell upon Harry, who was standing nearby. I hear Potter has a very interesting item. An invisibility cloak. Harry's expression instantly changed. He vehemently denied it. No. Absolutely not. Jax shrugged his shoulders and said slowly. The choice is yours, Harry. But I can guarantee that if I help, brewing the polyjuice potion will only take 5 days. You will quickly achieve your goal and put an end to the rumors circulating around. However, I want that invisibility cloak. Of course, I'm not the type to steal prized possessions. You only need to lend it to me for 1 week for research. Both Hermione and Harry were stunned. 5 days, the time had been reduced by a factor of 6. As for the price, Harry subconsciously clenched his fist. You can take your time to consider it. Jax said no more, turned, and left. Hermione watched his retreating figure, then looked at the grim-faced Harry. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Are you insane, Hermione? Handing the invisibility cloak over to that Jax. Just for his fooled potion. Who knows if he'll tamper with it or just refuse to give the cloak back. Ron Weasley's face was flushed crimson. What else can we do, Ron? Hermione looked at Harry pitifully. Harry kept his head down, completely overwhelmed by frustration. His eyes were bloodshot. Everyone thinks he's the heir of Slytherin. Malfoy is the biggest suspect right now, and we have to find out the truth. But we can't just. Ron. Hermione cut Ron off. This is the only way we can quickly uncover the truth. Even though Jax is also a Slytherin, at least he keeps his promises. And he's only borrowing it for a week to study. Hermione paused, then turned to look at Harry. Harry, I know the invisibility cloak is very important to you. If we can prove Malfoy is the heir, or at least find a lead. Harry was struggling intensely internally. He could no longer hold out against the recent rumors. Except for Hermione and Ron, everyone else was giving him suspicious looks. But, Jax immediately asked for his father's invisibility cloak. Yet, in the end, he took a deep breath, his voice hoarse. Hermione is right. 1 week. Just 1 week. Ron stared at him in disbelief. Finally, he let out a heavy snort and turned his head away. Fine, trust that guy all you want. A dueling club. What is Professor Lockhart trying to pull? New information quickly spread throughout the castle. Most students were extremely excited. After all, a dueling club had never been allowed before. That evening, a golden stage, very much in Lockhart's style, was set up in the center of the Great Hall. Lockhart himself wore extravagant robes, standing as if under a spotlight. Quiet, quiet, children. Do you feel the danger? Are you afraid? Worry no more. Your magnificent defense against the dark arts professor, Gilderoy Lockhart, will personally teach you how to effectively protect yourselves. A cheer erupted from the audience. For the first time, the voices of the young wizards were heard. Now, let us begin the first demonstration duel. Lockhart's gaze swept over the crowd and finally settled. Mr. Weasley and Mr. Blatch, please step onto the stage. Ron was reluctantly pushed onto the stage. Miles, however, was a little nervous. He glanced at Jax on the edge of the crowd below, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the stage. Remember. Dueling etiquette. Bow. Ron gave a perfunctory bend of the waist. Miles, however, bowed seriously. Wands up. I count to 3, and you may begin. 1, 2, 3. Before Lockhart could finish, 3. Expelliarmus. Miles acted almost instinctively. Following the principle of speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness taught by Jax, he thrust his wand forward sharply. A swift red light shot out. Ron didn't have time to react at all. He felt a jolt in his hand, and his wand flew out of his grasp. He stood frozen, his face filled with astonishment. Quote? The entire hall fell silent for a moment. This was immediately followed by roaring laughter from Slytherin and boos from Gryffindor. Lockhart was also startled, but quickly regained his smile. Ah! A clean and swift disarming charm. Mr. Blatch clearly understands the essence of combat. All right, next pair. He quickly cleared the stage, acting as if the recent awkwardness hadn't happened. Next, let's see a more exciting duel. Harry Potter versus Draco Malfoy. The atmosphere was instantly ignited. This was practically a duel between the suspected heirs. The two walked onto the stage. They glared at each other and bowed curtly. 3, 2, 1, begin. Lockhart shouted. Rictusempra. Harry struck first. Tarantalagra. Draco shouted almost simultaneously. The two spell lights grazed past each other. Harry nimbly jumped away, and Draco barely managed to dodge. Serpensortia. Draco smiled maliciously, pointing his wand at the ground. A puff of black smoke erupted, condensing into a black snake. It raised its head, flicking its tongue, emitting a threatening hiss. The crowd gasped and quickly backed away. Harry stared at the snake. An instinctive urge rose in his throat. Leave. The black snake shook its head in confusion, seeming hesitant. Attack. The black snake prepared to strike. Leave. Attack. In that moment, the entire hall was dead silent. Everyone heard it. Harry Potter. Draco Malfoy. They were speaking Parseltongue. Draco Malfoy let out a small chuckle. He couldn't lose. He was the heir. Attack. Attack him. You must not. Two commands were simultaneously acting upon the single snake. The black snake was completely confused. The next second, Jax pointed his wand, and the black snake vanished. Professor Lockhart, stop daydreaming. Ah, right. Lockhart snapped back to attention but had no idea how to handle the situation. Who could have imagined that two people suspected of being the heir both possessed the ability to speak Parseltongue? He can speak Parseltongue. Was that Parseltongue? Of course. Didn't you hear? He spoke the same language as Harry. But Draco is a Malfoy, he isn't of Slytherin's bloodline, and his Parseltongue wasn't even as clear as Harry's. We still need to investigate to prove the answer. Hearing this statement, Ron was about to explode. Hermione, since when have you been so dense? Hermione felt a little wronged. She was actually very conflicted. After all, the evidence Jax had given her could not directly and effectively prove the identity of the heir of Slytherin. We still need to go and ask. So the plan remains unchanged. Harry hasn't objected either. Harry had been silent for a long time. He couldn't figure out what was truly happening. Deep in the night, Jax stared at the steaming cauldron where the potion was brewing. Polyjuice potion is a difficult brew, but it posed no challenge to him. He had even optimized several steps. After using the Philosopher's Stone to fine-tune the properties of the potion, he greatly reduced the brewing time. Soon, the potion was finished. Here is the Polyjuice potion you requested, an optimized version. You don't need the target's hair, just stare at them when you drink it, and you will also gain all of their memories from the past 5 years. He handed the bottle to Hermione. Hermione carefully took it, her face showing astonishment. Thank you, Jax. Harry silently pulled the invisibility cloak from inside his robes. His reluctance was obvious. Jax took the invisibility cloak, a flicker of research interest in his eyes. 1 week. Harry emphasized. 1 week. Jax nodded. He then put the cloak away without another word. The transaction was complete. Hermione and Harry left with the Polyjuice potion. The invisibility cloak. This item is truly one of the legendary artifacts of the three brothers. Jax draped the invisibility cloak over himself. He completely disappeared. His presence could not be detected by magical instruments. Then he took it off and spread it out on an analysis table. The tip of his legendary wood wand lit up. He wasn't casting a spell, but guiding magic. At this moment, he seemed to see everything. Matter transformation. It's matter transformation again, but it's similar to the kind used by the Philosopher's Stone. A hint of understanding flashed in Jake's eyes. This changes light, vision, smell, temperature, outline. It transforms, shields, and distorts information. If that's the case, then, making the fake real, can also fully apply to this. Then, this treasure. I can replicate it. Very good. Jakes showed a slight smile. Having analyzed the principle and understood the ancient magic structure within it, replicating one would be exactly to his liking. Afterward, he carefully put away the invisibility cloak. The Quidditch pitch was bustling with noise. This match was Slytherin against Gryffindor. The game was almost completely one-sided. Slytherin's seeker, Draco Malfoy, was in terrible form. He flew crookedly on his Nimbus 2001. The golden snitch passed before his eyes several times, but his reactions were half a beat too slow. Someone in the stands booed. Is Malfoy sleepwalking? I heard he always sneaks out at night. Could it be that the pressure of being an heir is too much? Ha ha. Jakes sat in the Slytherin stands, expressionless. Desiring power, then frequently being influenced by the diary. Draco's spirit has long been exhausted. In this state, who knows how much longer he can last. In fact, it would be strange if he could play Quidditch well. On the other hand, Harry Potter. His will to win made him perform outstandingly. Finally, Harry, with a beautiful dive, firmly caught the golden snitch amidst Draco's bewildered gaze. Gryffindor wins. The Gryffindors rushed down from the stands and tossed Harry high into the air. In the crowd, a short first-year boy, with a Muggle camera hanging from his chest, excitedly squeezed to the front and frantically pressed the shutter at Harry. On the eve of Halloween. On the eve of Halloween. Harry, Ron, and Hermione received an unexpected invitation. It was for nearly headless Nick's 500th death day party. Sounds a bit creepy. Ron mumbled. But Nick invited us. We haven't even considered extending it. Then there's no harm in going to take a look. Hermione agreed. Just as they were discussing a ghost party. Jakes also didn't attend the feast. He happened to meet them. A death day party. Sounds interesting. You don't mind one more participant, do you? The three, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, were stunned. Hermione was the first to react. Although she was puzzled why Jakes was interested in a ghost party, she still nodded. Of course, you can. Nearly headless Nick will definitely welcome you. Jakes smiled. He followed them to the party. All right. In a cold room in the dungeons. Many translucent ghosts floated in the air. An orchestra played jarring music. Rotten food was laid out on long tables, emitting a disgusting odor. The living seemed out of place. Mr. Nick. Jakes walked up to Nick. Thank you for not inviting me, but I came anyway. Happy Death Day. However, I'm very interested in the form of ghost existence. I wonder if we could discuss it. He got straight to the point, his question aimed directly at the core. Nick's smile froze on his face. Slytherin brat, why don't you ask the Bloody Baron? I've asked him, he's always hesitant and not as cheerful as you, so I couldn't get an answer. Jakes replied obediently. There was a Slytherin humor in his tone. Nick retorted irritably. What do you want to ask? Jakes nodded. You exist between life and death. What magic maintains this state? Doesn't it violate the rules of the soul? The surrounding air seemed to drop a few more degrees. Other ghosts also stopped talking, looking at Jakes in unison. Young man. This question, is too profound, and, on this, joyful day, isn't discussing this a bit unpleasant. Jakes pressed. No comment. Nick suddenly became irritated again. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood by, feeling like their toes were curling up into a 3-bedroom apartment. Sorry, child. We don't want to discuss this. This is an offense to us. A chubby friar ghost mumbled. The surrounding ghosts began to show displeasure, and Jakes nodded understandingly. It seems I'm not welcome. All right, I didn't get the answer I was looking for anyway, so I'll leave this place. Happy Death Day again. He said no more, nodded to Harry and the others. Then turned and left the party. Leaving nearly headless Nick looking at them in bewilderment. He touched his almost severed neck. What a peculiar young man. Jake's departure did not affect the continuation of the party. As the party reached its midpoint, Nick felt that, as the host, he should check if the guests in other areas were behaving. He floated out of the dungeons and proceeded along a dim corridor. Just then, He heard a sound. A fishy smell wafted through the air. Nick turned his head curiously. Then, he saw, his translucent body instantly stiffened. The next moment, on the night of Halloween Eve, the second attack occurred. The news of nearly headless Nick being petrified instantly swept through all of Hogwarts. Panic. Everyone fell into a panic. A ghost. Even a ghost couldn't escape. What did this mean? The air of Slytherin and that monster's power was even stronger. Students hurried along. In groups, not daring to be alone. Even the most mischievous Peeves seemed to have reined himself in a lot. In the headmaster's office, the atmosphere was heavy. Dumbledore's gaze swept over the deans present. McGonagall, Snape, Flitwick, and Professor Sprout all had different expressions. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled slightly. Even a ghost was petrified. Albus, this is beyond all our understanding, even Nick. This means the attacker's danger level must be re-evaluated. Snape's voice was cold. Just then, a bureaucratic owl, flapping its wings, flew in through the window. A letter from the Ministry of Magic landed on Dumbledore's desk. Dumbledore picked up the letter and quickly scanned it. It seems Minister Fudge and his friends can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening at Hogwarts. They suggest we strengthen management and intend to intervene if necessary. Intervene. Professor McGonagall raised her voice. How do they intend to intervene? Send a team of Aurors to turn the castle upside down. Calm down, Minerva. Dumbledore said calmly. Currently, this is just a letter of suggestion, but we do need to speed things up. Investigate thoroughly. Snape nodded. The professors' faces showed increasing pressure. Jakes once again took out Tom Riddle's diary. This time, he didn't bother with pleasantries. What do you want to do now? A trade, or rather, a notification. Tell me what you know about soul magic. Arrogant. How can the mysteries of the soul be? If you refuse. Jakes interrupted him, his tone unwavering. I'll go kill the basilisk right now. The diary trembled violently. Riddle's consciousness erupted with intense shock and anger. You are not allowed to do that. Salazar Slytherin's basilisk is not something you can kill. Jakes stated calmly, that is indeed true. But what if I bring a screaming rooster? Or get Gryffindor's sword? Silence. Dead silence. The ink on the diary showed that Tom Riddle's consciousness was extremely agitated. How could the heir of Slytherin get Gryffindor's sword? Is this true? He knows the basilisk's weakness. How did he do it? You wouldn't dare. If you kill the basilisk, Hogwarts will fall into chaos. What does chaos have to do with me? Jakes's response was devoid of emotion. My goal is knowledge and power. At that time, the basilisk's eyes and venom will also be valuable materials, and I will sell them all. It's a very good deal for me. I'll give you 3 seconds to consider telling me. The countdown began. 3, 2, wait. Riddle's voice held a hint of panic. I'll tell you. The ancient magic of the soul is composed of memory, emotion, and will core. Intermittent, profound knowledge began to enter Jakes's mind from the diary. These explanations were not as direct as the power granted by the template. But they still helped him understand a lot. After obtaining some of the required information, Jakes went to the second floor. To the famous Myrtle's girls' lavatory. At this moment, crying Myrtle was floating above a toilet, weeping. Oh, another one. You boys, always coming into the girls' bathroom, do you also think I deserve to die? Jakes ignored her complaints. Recently, besides me, has anyone else been here? Myrtle stopped crying. Oh, there was one. A boy with golden hair and a nose turned up to the sky. He also came a few nights ago. Making ugly hissing noises at that faucet. He even told me I was too loud. She snorted angrily. Jakes nodded. Indeed. Now Draco has become the last heir. And the attack that killed Nick was precisely because of Draco. The dizziness from the potion had not completely subsided. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were now wearing slightly oversized dark green robes. Blended in with the Slytherin common room. I feel like I'm wearing someone else's skin. And this wizard robe is really ugly. Ron muttered softly, tugging uncomfortably at his collar. Quiet. Hermione whispered a warning. Their target was lounging lazily by the fireplace. Draco Malfoy. Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to walk over. Draco. Malfoy raised an eyelid. What is it? Harry lowered his voice, trying to sound curious. We heard some rumors about you, and things like the heir of the Chamber of Secrets. Malfoy's lips curled into a smug smile. Oh, you're only finding out now. Hermione was also curious. Someone said, you understand Parseltongue. Just like Salazar Slytherin himself. But this should be an ability of Slytherin's descendants, why do you possess it? Mentioning Parseltongue. But also mentioning that ancient founder. Malfoy's eyes constantly changed. Parseltongue. That's just a facade, a stepping stone. And who told you that only those of bloodline can master it? A stepping stone. Harry mimicked his tone. That's right. Malfoy's voice was even lower. I am pursuing a more ancient, more powerful force. A power that only the purest wizard bloodline is worthy of touching. Snakes are not just pets or tools. They are carriers of power, guardians of ancient magic. They will bestow unimaginable power upon their followers. And Parseltongue is the key to gaining this recognition. Hermione couldn't help but let out a tiny gasp. Malfoy glanced at her. And I am getting close to it. He leaned back in his chair, concluding with a proud tone. Just wait and see. When that power awakens, the glory of Hogwarts, purebloods will be revived by us. Harry felt a chill. Snakes, ancient power. Parseltongue, is the key. This heir of Slytherin's story, might be more dangerous than imagined. Hermione Granger's brows furrowed. She couldn't stand being so passive anymore. We have to do something. Basilisk, king of serpents, deadly gaze, fears the crow of a rooster. But how do we confirm where it is? Harry ran his hands through his hair in frustration. A basilisk created by Salazar Slytherin hundreds of years ago, can we really defeat it on our own? Ron was a bit scared. Hermione's eyes sharpened, at least we know the truth of all this. The heir of Slytherin is Draco Malfoy. The real culprit is a basilisk. Even the case involving Hagrid 50 years ago was a setup. At least, they had made progress. At this moment, Jakes was extracting the last bits of knowledge from the diary. Suddenly, the diary trembled. They know. The basilisk has been exposed. Jakes's thoughts were calm. Oh. This proves that your pawn is too useless. They can't even keep a few secrets. You. Good. Very good. In that case, let the game enter its ending early. Draco. It's time to prove that you are the true heir. I will help you, guide you. You, too, will help Draco. The last sentence was directed at Jakes. Jakes frowned slightly. Why? You won't even tell me where you got your soul magic from, so why should I help you? The diary let out a sigh of helplessness. You cannot bear it, you don't even dare to kill, why do you pursue such power? I'll make a deal with you. Jakes smiled. I understand. Tell me, I can only help you a little, though. Late at night, all was silent. Draco, following the guidance, once again arrived at Myrtle's bathroom. However, another person was with him. Do I really have to do this? The passage is right there. Draco turned his head sharply. Jakes stood at the doorway. He didn't know when he got there. Open it, or give up. Jakes's tone held neither encouragement nor dissuasion. I told you, pursuing power requires a price and courage. I will. To prove himself, Draco walked to the snake-shaped faucet. Recalling the Parseltongue pronunciation Riddle had taught him. He opened his mouth and made a sound. Open. Immediately after, Jakes uttered an even more standard Parseltongue. Open. The next second, the faucet spun rapidly. The entire sink vibrated, then sank into the ground. A dark pipe opening, emitting a foul, fishy smell, wafted towards them. Draco's face instantly turned pale. He instinctively took a step back, his body trembling. Release it. Did he really do it? Jakes glanced at the bottomless pipe. The rest is up to you. He left those words and turned to walk away. As if opening the Chamber of Secrets and releasing the basilisk was not important to him. Draco watched Jakes disappear through the doorway. He hissed at the pipe again. This time, it was the command Riddle had taught him. Awaken, heed my summons, come out. Deep within the pipe. The sound of scales scraping against the pipe echoed. Then a giant snake slowly poked its head out. Ah. I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. Draco could no longer bear the pressure. He screamed and scrambled away from the bathroom. But he had fulfilled his mission, the basilisk was unleashed. Alarm. Highest level alarm. Piercing screams shattered the tranquility of Hogwarts. The portraits frantically moved between the walls. A basilisk. Roaming the castle. A portrait saw it. On the third-floor corridor. The professors' faces were pale. Professor McGonagall immediately rang the emergency assembly bell. All the students awoke from their slumber, the professors were fully armed. All sorts of official instruments were prepared. Because Hogwarts was about to face its great battle. The castle entered its highest state of alert. A basilisk. Why would something like this appear in the school? Attention. Do not look into its eyes. Dumbledore suddenly cast a sonorous charm. Reminding everyone. Amidst the chaos, Harry Potter felt a certain vague sensation. He, Ron, and Hermione disregarded the ban and, in a nearly deserted corridor, found themselves face to face with the enormous monster. He kept his eyes tightly shut. Quick, get out of the way. The basilisk's tail swept, and the stone wall collapsed. All three were sent flying. At the critical moment, Harry was directly knocked into the headmaster's office. Ah! This is the basilisk. Suddenly, a phoenix cry rang out. It was Fawkes flying, subduing the giant snake with his voice. Then, the basilisk painfully flicked its tongue, hissing. What should we do now? Young man, do you desire power? Harry vaguely opened his eyes. Facing him was the Sorting Hat, which he only saw once a year. Inside the hat was a golden sword. He lunged to the side and drew the sword of Gryffindor from the hat. While the basilisk was in pain, he plunged the heavy blade into the basilisk's body. Whoosh! The sword of Gryffindor pierced through its brain. Accompanied by the phoenix's cry. The huge snake's body stopped its violent thrashing. Finally, it ceased to move. The basilisk was eliminated. It's over. Harry. You did it. You killed the basilisk. That was awesome, Harry. Hermione and Ron rushed over. They embraced Harry. The three of them could finally open their eyes. The basilisk's massive corpse lay in the corridor outside the headmaster's office. At this moment, the professors had arrived one after another. They saw this scene and couldn't help but gasp. Merlin's pants. What in the world happened? That's the sword of Gryffindor. Harry killed the basilisk with the sword. This meant the danger was averted. Well done, child. You have become the true champion of Gryffindor. Dumbledore appeared from somewhere. His blue eyes fell upon Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Thanks to you, the basilisk was defeated. All right, the crisis is now over. The biggest problem now is how to dispose of these things. The subsequent cleanup work had just begun. Professor Snape looked as if he had found a treasure. He was the first to approach the basilisk's corpse. He carefully performed preliminary handling with his wand. The fangs, the intact venom glands, and the hardness of these scales. They are almost all rare potion ingredients. He had already begun listing a series of wild recipes in his mind. Professor Sprout also rushed over with several older Hufflepuff students. She first reminded the children to be careful. Then she began examining the basilisk's blood. Be careful, children, collect this blood, and don't waste the crushed moss. The life substrate of a powerful magical creature can be used in the greenhouses. Even Rubius Hagrid rushed over after hearing the news. His huge figure squeezed into the corridor, looking at the basilisk's corpse. A complex emotion was written on his face. Merlin's beard, it's truly massive. Professor, look, could you spare me a few scales? And this snakeskin, if I take it back to make a new bed, it'll definitely be sturdy. Professor McGonagall frowned, watching the professors and students dissecting the basilisk's corpse like hunters. Finally, she waved her hand tiredly. Clean it up quickly, do not leave any safety hazards. As for the specific distribution, you discuss it among yourselves. She turned and left, preparing to comfort the frightened students. Dumbledore stood a little further away, watching the scene with profound eyes. The crisis was temporarily averted. But he needed to go to the Ministry of Magic immediately to make the necessary report. Even to negotiate with Fudge and the officials of the ministry. Before leaving, his gaze swept over two figures. He thought, I'll come back and talk to them after this is over. The basilisk had been eliminated. The tense atmosphere at Hogwarts dissipated significantly. But the exhaustion of surviving the ordeal had not yet faded. Especially in the Slytherin common room. Many people believed that this was all Slytherin's fault. At this moment, Draco Malfoy was pale. He glared fiercely at Jakes, who had returned, his chest heaving violently. He blocked Jakes, his voice suppressed and furious. It was you. All you. You clearly knew. You clearly knew the basilisk from that diary was so dangerous. You clearly knew where the Chamber of Secrets was. You even helped me open it. But why did you stop caring? You watched me summon the basilisk. You watched it run out. And then you watched Harry Potter become a hero. Are you messing with me? Jakes stopped and looked at him expressionlessly. Especially the series of accusations, which made him unsure which one to answer first. The other party felt like a fool. All his ambition, all his fear, had turned into a farce. And all of this was orchestrated by Jakes. Jakes slowly spoke, his voice so calm it lacked any emotion. Don't take your own incompetence out on me. I told you all this to get what I wanted from the diary. Helping you open the passage was also a transaction with the diary. As for you failing to gain power and being made a fool of, that is entirely due to your own incompetence. Draco froze, opening his mouth. You lunatic. Jakes smiled. This isn't your first day cooperating with me, is it? You can call me selfish, but don't blame me for trying to harm you. Striving for power, seeking your father's approval, those were all your own choices, weren't they? Draco was so angry he was ready to fight. But he realized he couldn't beat Jakes. In the end, he could only curse weakly. You will never earn my trust again. Jakes walked past him, dropping a remark. If you are this childish, you will never get Lucius's approval. I almost thought you were going to say you wouldn't cooperate with me anymore. The next second, Draco's face immediately flushed red. Cancel cooperation with Jakes. He didn't have that much authority. Ultimately, he was too weak, unable to decide the House of Malfoy's destiny, and unable to gain his father's approval. So, he angrily slammed the sofa and returned to his dormitory. Late at night, Jakes took out the black diary. This time, the diary was unusually quiet. But beneath the silence was an explosion of hatred. You win, for now. You destroyed my basilisk, destroyed my plans of many years. But, I remember you. As long as I exist, as long as this fragment of soul has not been annihilated, I will definitely have my revenge. In the way you fear most. I will make you. You won't get the chance. Jakes interrupted coldly. The next second, he flipped his wrist, revealing a small, sharp fragment of a fang. There was black venom still on the fang. Without hesitation, he plunged it into the center of the diary. PFF'd. The diary was pierced. Tom Riddle's soul began to tremble violently. No. As a large amount of pitch-black substance gushed out. An aura of dark arts instantly vanished. And the diary visibly began to crumble. Jakes had killed the diary. It succeeded. See, the basilisk remains I brought can kill the diary. This Horcrux is destroyed. On the now silent diary. The soul fragment belonging to 16-year-old Tom Riddle completely dissipated. The diary became completely ordinary. Lord Voldemort's first Horcrux was thus completely destroyed. Jakes let out a long breath. He thought, after all this maneuvering, the plan hadn't failed. The matter seemed to have concluded. Hogwarts Castle finally resumed its usual rhythm. The next day, at the corner of the corridor, Harry Potter nervously stopped Jakes. Jakes. That invisibility cloak. Jakes stopped, taking a piece of silvery cloth from his belt. And handed it over. I was just about to look for you. Harry took a deep breath and put the invisibility cloak away. Thank you, for being willing to return it to me. Also, although the process was very perilous, if you hadn't provided the polyjuice potion, allowing us to force Draco to awaken the basilisk early, we wouldn't have been able to resolve this matter so quickly. Jakes smiled faintly. So that's what you think. Alright, no problem at all. You're welcome. Harry nodded, saying nothing more. He recalled Jakes warning Lockhart to stop the match at the dueling club. This was one time Jakes had helped him out of a difficult situation. He had long felt differently about the young man standing before him. Just as Hermione had said, not all Slytherins are the same. A few days later, Dumbledore returned from the Ministry of Magic. Seeing that Professor McGonagall had basically restored order at Hogwarts, he naturally felt much more at ease. However, something surprised him. Jakes voluntarily came to the headmaster's office. Lemon drop. No, Thank you, Professor Dumbledore. Jakes refused cleanly and decisively. He stood in the center of the office, without any preamble. And cut straight to the chase. This is how everything happened. It was a Tom Riddle's diary. It tempted Ginny Weasley, and controlled Draco Malfoy. The soul inside recounted the events of 50 years ago, and invited me to help Draco kill everyone. In the end, fortunately, Harry dealt with the basilisk. The basilisk's remains could destroy this diary. Regarding the entire process, he concealed some details. First, he had already known about the diary and that it was a Horcrux. Second, his goal was to obtain information about soul magic from the diary. Third, he had largely guided some of the situations. He cautiously described the situation, making it sound like a coincidence. After a long silence fell over the office. Dumbledore's eyes, which seemed to see through people, stared directly at Jakes. Fawkes let out a soft cry from his perch. Is something wrong, Professor Dumbledore? Dumbledore spoke slowly. That is excellent. My boy. I was thinking, a very dangerous dark arts item, involved 2 students, and even released a basilisk. And I knew nothing of it, allowing it to sneak into Hogwarts. That is my dereliction of duty. And you actually risked yourself to handle it alone. I confirmed the risk was controllable. And the outcome was positive. Jakes replied. Dumbledore nodded. I can see that. If the situation hadn't been manageable, we wouldn't be chatting so casually here. But this was still too dangerous, Jakes. Jakes also remained silent, then conceded slightly. My apologies, Professor. But in the end, Dumbledore merely sighed softly. Tom Riddle's diary. Yes, this information is indeed crucial. Could you let me see this object? Subsequently, Jakes took the diary out from his belt. The diary had been destroyed and was already tattered. There was no trace of magic left on it. It was just a diary, as ordinary as could be. I see. I understand something, but I cannot tell you yet, as I am not certain. Are you willing to entrust this diary to my keeping? Jakes handed it over without hesitation. He didn't need the item now, so there was no reason to keep it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have actively sought out Dumbledore, discussed the entire matter, and involved himself in the vortex. Of course. Finally, Dumbledore accepted the diary. His tone became somewhat serious. Given that you did resolve the issue and brought crucial information, this time, I will not investigate further. But, Jakes, power and knowledge are accompanied by responsibility and limits. I hope you remember, never touch the darkness. This was almost the first time Dumbledore had been so direct with Jakes. Without beating around the bush. Jakes agreed. The cost of touching it far exceeds your imagination. I understand. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave, Professor. He turned and left without the slightest hesitation. Dumbledore watched the office door. His gaze remained fixed for a long time. Jakes took out the dark red Philosopher's Stone. And a piece of white cloth. First, he sprinkled the unique scale powder collected from the basilisk's corpse, along with some purified venom crystals, onto the cloth. He waved his legendary wood wand, guiding the power within the Philosopher's Stone. He utilized the power of the template, adding the rule power of mistaking the genuine for the fake. At the same time, he took the fragmented knowledge of soul laws obtained from the diary and slowly tried to integrate it into the Philosopher's Stone and the white cloth. Magical power was being violently consumed. Mental focus was intensely concentrated. Sweat even dripped from his temples. Half an hour later, magical power seemed to start merging with the depths of his soul. Jakes noticed the timing and immediately took out the prepared moonbeast hair and several spatial materials. Using the carving knife he had previously bought, he inscribed ancient runes. Finally, everything merged together. Several hours later, in front of Jakes, an invisibility cloak, slightly dull and of poor texture, floated in midair. It's not perfect. The information conversion is still lacking, preventing it from reaching the most perfect state. It could bend light, achieving basic invisibility. But it could not achieve the same effect as Harry's, where even spells could not reveal it. Yet it was still much better than the precious invisibility cloaks available on the market. There was no disappointment in Jake's eyes. Only a calm analysis of the reasons. Finally, he summarized. It still needs further refining. But that is a matter for the future. This attempt was not without gain. The template received a further upgrade. His power advanced another small step. Current template. 70% integrated. Slytherin common room. Draco Malfoy sat alone by the fireplace. His face was no longer as pale, but his despondency remained. Clearly, the recent shattering of his dream of being the heir had severely wounded his pride. Jakes walked over and sat down opposite him. Draco looked up, watching him with complicated eyes. That diary. It almost ruined me. What ruined you wasn't the diary. Jakes said, somewhat surprised but in a calm tone, it was your own lack of accurate understanding of power. Draco opened his mouth, wanting to refute him, but found himself speechless. Jakes looked at him and continued, the essence of Slytherin lies in ambition. Not in pinning your hopes on a dark arts item of unknown origin. You aren't playing the role of some savior, are you? He stood up, looking down at Draco. If you genuinely want to gain power, you should focus your energy on more practical matters. As a member of the Malfoy family, your resources, and your intellect are all resources for you to become stronger. So why obsess over the illusory title of heir? Having finished speaking, he said nothing more. Draco froze in place. Jakes' words deeply moved him. Family resources, power, Slytherin ambition. Yes, wasn't the power of the Malfoy family enough for him to wield? He watched Jakes' retreating figure. For the first time, he felt that he was inferior to a Muggle. Well, he had felt that way before, too. But the pride deep in his bones would not allow him to admit that thought directly. Now, the pride in his bones had transformed into humility. Thanks for watching.